This is Jocko Podcast number 46 with Echo Charles and me, Jocko Willink. Good evening, Echo.
Good evening.
There is a little survival instinct. It's very subtle. But I would notice it sometimes in a combat situation. When guys are thinking that enemy fire at any time could open up and kill them, you'd see some guys subconsciously. They just try and make themselves a little bit of a smaller target. They just kind of slouch their backs down a little bit, and they just kind of bow their head just a tad. It's not a bad thing to do. I don't think guys actually think about it. I don't think they consciously do it. I think it just kind of happens. I think it happens when you think you could get shot at any moment. And it's likely a good instinct to have. And when we first got to Ramadi, we were out on patrol, and I saw one of my guys on a real patrol. It's my first time seeing this particular guy on a real patrol. And it was in the Malab district of Ramadi, which was just an enemy-controlled cesspool of violence with threats everywhere. And as I saw this guy, he was standing straight up. Just standing straight up. His head was held high. His weapon was at the ready. He was scanning. He was hunting. There was no slouch in his back. There was no lowering of his head. There was no fear apparent on his face or in his posture. He was just boldly facing the threat. Standing tall. Now, you've heard me talk about some of my guys in Task Unit Bruiser that I worried about. Some of the guys, I thought that they basically had too much courage, too much bravery, and it just didn't seem like that kind of attitude was survivable. Day after day after day after bloody day in Ramadi. But somehow, some way, through some divine providence, this particular brave soul did survive and actually thrived in that environment in the Battle of Ramadi with Task Unit Bruiser. Now, Task Unit Bruiser was made up of two SEAL platoons, Charlie Platoon and Delta Platoon. And Charlie Platoon we've talked about before. Leif Babin was the platoon commander. Tony Efrati, who's been on the podcast. BTF Tony, he was the platoon chief. And the lead sniper for Charlie Platoon was Chris Kyle. And in the other platoon, Delta Platoon, where Andrew Paul, who's also been on the podcast, he was the assistant platoon commander. And the point man and sniper, the lead point man and lead sniper for Delta Platoon was that guy, was the guy that I just described, walking through the literal valley of death with his head held high. And his name is Jeremiah Dinnell, also known as J.P. Dinnell. That's what I always called him. And we have him as a guest on the podcast tonight. Now, when JP was in Task Unit Bruiser, he was a kid. When we were in workup, I think he was 22 years old. When we deployed, he was 23 years old. And I love JP. He was like a brother. And to be quite honest with you, he's like a little brother to me. And I loved his aggressiveness. And when we were going through workup, he would just straight up execute anything I told him to do. Anything. Like a hyper aggressive Terminator robot. I would look at him and I'd say, JP, take that room. Or JP, get on that high ground. Or JP, get those prisoners out of here. And he would just get after it and make it happen and just destroy or outmaneuver anything that was in his way. Like one time we were going through mount training, which is urban warfare. So we're in kind of a fake city with buildings and all this. And there was a building across the street and we were taking massive paintball fire. Again, it's just training, but we're getting shot up with paintball. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, we're if this is real, we're getting killed. And I know that we need to get aggressive to stop this. And say, I'm kind of give the command of, hey, we need to hit that building across the street. And like as the last word is coming out of my mouth, I see JP just bust out of the door of the building we're in, go running across the street with his gun blazing, just caveman smash through the door of the target building, goes in there, and I just see muzzle flash as he's just machine gunning people. And I thought to myself, okay, JP can bring it. At least he can bring it during training. Because courage against paintball in training is actually not that big of a deal at all. In fact, it's borderline meaningless, but it is an indication. Now, courage in sustained combat is another thing. And JP proved himself as a true warrior over and over and over again during the Battle of Ramadi. And I'm honored to have my brother, JP Dinnell, on the podcast today. JP, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me here.
And we have to start with trying to understand where you come from.
How much time do we have?
Where you grew up and
Yeah.
and all that. And it's pretty cool. I mean, I know your mom and dad, and I've actually grappled against your dad.
Yeah. It's one of his highlights. He loves that. He talks about it all the time. Being
He's
able to roll with you.
strong man.
Scary strong.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and how old? So how old is he now?
he is 54, 55.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So 10 years ago, he was my age.
Yeah.
So when I grappled with him, he was my age.
Yeah.
And I thought he was all old.
No.
And right now, if you called me old, I'd be pissed.
Yeah, I know you would be.
So, Mr. Dinnell, I apologize. I thought you were old back in the day.
Nope.
He grabbed a hold of my head
And you were my
almost
age
ripped it
that
off.
I am right now.
Oh, that's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, that's
crazy.
true. So, tell us about where you come from. What was like growing up? All that stuff.
I had a good life. My parents are awesome, very hard workers. Grew up tight on money. My dad did construction and framing in the 80s, and my mom taught step aerobics. Not a lot of money there.
Get some.
But they constantly worked for our family.
Yeah.
It was awesome. Now every Sunday we were at church, not having a lot of money to go out and do stuff. We'd go for drives. That's what we did. Our family would go for drives and just go, see we're in Northern California, Sacramento. Mm-hmm. Within 20 minutes, you can be in the foothills, and it's just beautiful. Mm-hmm. We go to my grandparents' property. My dad's parents were a very big part of our life as well growing up. Grandfather's an old World War II vet, was on a destroyer. My grandmother's an amazing woman, wakes up every morning still at 5 a.m. to pray for everybody in the family. They have 5 acres up in the foothills, the pasture with horses. So for kids, it was awesome. Brother and sister. my parents, you know, they didn't wait for having kids. You know, I had me, and then, you know, I think it was like 17 months later, my brother comes. Then 17 months later, after that, my sister comes. So, you know, I'm a dad. You know, I have kids.
Irish twins, they call that.
Yeah, it was just like boom, boom, boom. You know, awesome. You know, my brother and my sister are like two of my closest best friends still. You know, we just always used to grow up playing Navy SEALs. You know, and
where'd you get? Okay, so going into the next question, which I am always curious, is how did you hear about the teams?
Actually, my brother saw something on TV. There's some special about the forming of the SEALs and the, you know, JFK's speech and all this stuff, and he had my parents record it, and we would watch that every morning that we could. You know, we're young, you know, we're trying to go to school. My brother's popping that in the VCR, and so every weekend we definitely watched it, and then we would, you know, dress up in camis and paint our faces and stuff that we got from old Army Navy surplus store or just from garage sales, and we would go play Navy SEALs, you know, and we'd go up to my grandparents as like a haven, you know, and it's funny now, like I didn't know what I was doing, but I used to like do make up little ghillie suits, and I would have my parents drop me off at the front entrance of my grandparents' property. I'd wait until I got up to the house, and I'd say, "Hey, I want to see if you can see me sneaking up there." And I would try to stalk up to my grandparents' house.
Good training.
I mean, yeah, and you know, so that, you know, it was a really good life. You know, all my aunts and uncles and cousins, you know, we're all really close, and just really close family. You know, my uncle. One of my closest uncles, you know, he's a cop back where we grew up, and, you know, he's still serving the community. He's a legit badass. And, you know, so I was surrounded by a lot of good people that didn't know anything other than working hard. Mm-hmm. Like, you just have to work hard. There's no excuses for that. There's no handouts. Like, you've just got to get after it. And that's just kind of how I learned about the teams. And, you know, as you get older in high school, you kind of forget about that stuff. But yeah, it was a pretty good, solid base. Great life.
Did you enlist right out of high school then?
Yeah. I was in my senior year of high school.
What, didn't you break your leg or have some weird situation?
I broke my hand.
Broke your hand.
Yeah, so my hand was in a cast.
How'd you do that?
Well, you know.
No, I just think it's interesting that you just told this story of this kind of, you know, picture perfect childhood with all this goodness around you. But I'll just going to straight up tell people, JP might crack a few people once in a while if they need it when he was a young kid.
Yeah. Definitely never went out looking for it and starting it, but if it was there, you know. Anyways, we're at a party with my buddies, and no, actually, we're just like kind of hanging out at the house, and I don't know, what happened. Some guys showed up. Got in a fight, broke my hand. You know, like a smart young man, don't go to the hospital that night. My hand's like ballooning up. Well, you know, the next day we're going to go whitewater rafting.
Sounds like a good plan.
I mean, I can't not do that with all my friends. So I just put my hand in the river the whole time because I'm like, that's like ice, right? Mm-hmm. I get home. I thought my mom was going to just beat me. Mm-hmm. And she's a short, little, just thin, athletic woman. And I was just like terrified.
You were afraid she was going to do some step aerobics on your head.
Yes, exactly. She was going to get after it. So I go, you know, so she's like, yeah, we're going to the hospital. And so we go there, and they're like, yeah, you broke your knuckle, this bone, and fractured the wrist. And I'm like, okay. So I get in a cast. Of course, my dad's pissed off, you know. And he's just like, you know, it's my senior year. I'm getting close to graduation. Mm-hmm. And there was no talk of college. I played water polo my senior year, and one of the JCs my coach said, hey, you know, if you go to this JC, UC Davis, you know, you could be going over and playing over there. I just knew college wasn't what I wanted to do. At the time, it just wasn't for me. I wasn't going to waste time or money doing something I just wasn't driven to do. And, you know, my dad's like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with your life? And I was like, I don't know. I'll probably be a whitewater rafting guide and live up in the mountains. And he's like, what are you going to do with your life? He's like, nothing wrong with that. But, you know, he's like, no. Like, no. And because one of my best friends did that, and which it was just cool, chill lifestyle.
Seems cool, yeah.
It would be great for the soul, right?
Yeah.
And so anyways, my dad was like, what about the military? Like, what about being a Navy SEAL? You used to always talk about it. And at the time, all I could think about was just like the regular Fleet Navy recruiters that would come to high school. And this was pre 9/11, so nobody's really very motivated. And, you know, they would come to the high school, but they never really engaged with the students or anything. So I was like, that's the Navy? I don't know. Go to work that next day, and because I'm in a cast, they had me at the front register. And for the first time ever, I noticed across the street is a Navy recruiting office. I was like, oh, I'll go in there. So I went in there, and of course, they're like, oh, what are you going to do? Blah, blah, blah. What are you here for? I was like, I was thinking about joining the Navy. Want to be a Navy SEAL. They all start laughing. I was like, check. I was pissed. Like, I was like real mad. They're like, well, you know, all the SEAL wannabes have to talk to petty officer so-and-so. And yeah, that dude, when he said the SEAL wannabe part, I was fired up. And then he goes, and we can't do anything with your cast on. I'm like, all right, roger that. They're like, you know, if you want to come talk to him, he'll be on Thursday. It was on Tuesday. So I go back to work. I'm just staring at the Navy recruiting office the whole time, just stewing. So I'm like, dude, I'm in good shape. You know, like I'm a very good athlete. Like I can do this. And go back home and tell my dad. My dad's like, hey, how's work? Am I good? I was like, hey, I'm joining the Navy and I can't go do anything for boot camp with this cast on. Like, I don't know. Like, you know, in my mind, I'm like, I'm leaving for boot camp tomorrow, something like that, right? And so he's like, cool, go start the bathtub, start soaking it. I'll get some tools out of the garage. And so my dad comes in there and he has like some like sheet metal shears and something else, a Sawzall.
Yeah.
And we just got after it and we cut off my cast. Dude, I thought my mom was going to beat my dad. Like, she was like, what? And of course I was like, yeah, I'm joining the Navy. I'm going to go be a Navy SEAL. So all of a sudden I cut off my cast and now her baby boy's leaving to, you know, go join the military. And she's my poor mom, you know. And so I go back on Thursday. I walk in. They look at me. They look at my cast not being there. They're like, you need to talk to Petty Officer so-and-so. I'm like, all right, roger that. And so that just started the rest of the process. And, you know, a lot of rehab. My parents had a cafe. They sold that. So me and my dad could do construction together to spend as much time together as possible. And my mom was able to spend time with her mom that was passing away. And that's how I rehabbed my hand. And my dad would actually wrap my hand up in some of my old kickboxing wraps and boxing wraps, tape it up, and then we would tape the hammer to my hand because I couldn't grip it. Like, I could not grip anything. And, you know, that's what he did. Because I'd see my old man go to work with a cast on, and he would have to tape tools to his cast to work.
I mean, your dad's not the kind of guy that's going to let broken limbs stop him from getting a good day's work in. No, you just tape that tool to your body and make something happen.
So that's what he did with me. And it was awesome. And he knew, like, I wanted to go to Buds, and I was going to go to Buds. And so he would push me to my absolute limit every day at work. Like, I mean, every day. I mean, I would be pissed, sometimes borderline crying because I was so mad. Not like tears of, like, you know, pain or whatever, but I was so mad at him. And he'd see it, and he'd throttle back a little bit, and he'd make me go. You know, some days, like, I'd come in to work hungover sometimes, and he would be like, hey, I need you to go rent a 90-pound jackhammer. There was no need for a 90-pound jackhammer.
Yes, there is. Needs to jackhammer your brain back
exactly.
into
and
reality.
So for 8 hours, I would be jackhammering concrete with a 90-pound jackhammer while he was doing what he was doing. And then, I mean, it was awesome, though. I mean, he would push me to the absolute limit, and my mom and him were awesome with communications and helping me out with stuff, and it was good. And so then I left September 5th, 2001. Had a SEAL contract.
Dang.
I was in Buds. I was in boot camp when 9/11 happened. And, you know, it was just weird. I was so pissed.
Did they tell you guys about it?
Yeah, we were on lockdown. And they're like, hey, the nation's being attacked. We'll give you guys more info. And we're like, what? Of course, you have all the weak-minded people in there that start crying. Like, I'm 18, right?
Yeah.
Like, barely 18. And there's just grown men crying. Like, I didn't sign up for this. I'm like getting fired up. Like, you need to shut up, sit down. Like, I'm just
JP's looking for a battle axe at this point.
Yeah, I'm like, how do I go to Buds right now? Do I have to finish boot camp? Can I just go, you know? But yeah, so I was in boot camp when 9/11 happened, and I always felt like, well, I didn't feel like, I knew that being a Navy SEAL is what I needed to do and what I wanted to do, and it's what God wanted me to do. And just everything just fell into place. You know, it was pretty awesome. So
then you Go to Buds.
Yep.
You went to Buds right around the same time as Leif and Andrew Paul.
I was one class behind them. They were class 241. I was class 242.
And then you ended up in SQT with those guys.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Which is like the training after you get through the basic SEAL training, Buds, which is where you do push-ups and all that stuff and do pull-ups and have a boat on your head and all that stuff. And a bunch of people quit. Then you go to something a little bit more advanced called SQT, where you actually learn some SEAL skills.
Yeah.
And then you check into a team. And then you check into Team 3.
Yep, checking in Team 3.
And knock out your first platoon as a new guy. What was that like?
It was good. It was cool. You know, I checked in Team 3, and you know, it was like, hey, we need some volunteers to go to a driving school. It's an off-road Hummer racing and navigation school. And I was like, how do I get my hand up fast enough for that? And it just worked out great. Like, I literally checked into the team.
Isn't the team's ridiculous?
It is.
I mean, you're 18 years old, and they're like, hey, we're going to send you an off-road racing school for free, and we're going to give you a bunch of money to go there, by the way, so you can buy good meals.
Yeah, you're going to go for a month. 2 weeks straight is going to be off-road driving, racing, and 2 weeks going to be navigation. I was like, I literally just, you know, I just come back from Kodiak, Alaska. We were doing our cold weather training. So I was up there. I was gone for a month. Come back legitimately for a couple days. And, you know, my girlfriend at the time was like, oh, you're back. I'm so happy. And then all of a sudden I was like, hey, I'm leaving tomorrow. And, I mean, I was just like, I was just happy. You know, I was like, yes, this is awesome. This is legit. I'm in the teams. Like, I'm getting to do stuff, you know. And went out there.
And there's a freaking war going on.
Yeah, and I just wanted to be as well equipped as possible. And one of my good bros, Derek Benson, you know, he was killed on Extortion 17. He's from Northern California as well, and he was one Buds class ahead of me. So he had checked into team a little bit to Team 3 prior to me. We both went to that driving school together, and that's where we just became like best friends. You know, so it was awesome. It was a good time out there. You know, learned a lot, and you know, there's older team guys out there too. You know, that I got to actually interact with, and you know, just guys not from my platoon, so they weren't so hard on me because I was a new guy. But at the same time, like, I was just learning the balance of the teams because I'm a overly nice and social, and I like to talk to everybody and be everybody's friend. And when you're a new guy in the SEAL teams, that's usually not the best thing. When you're like, hey, how are you doing, buddy? You know, and they're like, shut up. Like, or like, why are you talking to me? And I'm like, because we're going to be friends. You know, like, we're going to war together. Let's be friends, you know? And so it was, but it was cool, you know? And then, I come back, and, then all of a sudden we're headed out on our first trip, and we're headed out to Shaw's to do shooting school. And, I mean, we're getting ready to fly out there, and I just see this big, huge Native American dude. I'm like, I hope he's in my platoon. You know what I mean? I was just like, you're drawn to like just awesome warrior looking guys, right? And he's just very stoic, and just, so I was like, dude, I really hope he's in my platoon. And he was. It's my boy Steve Chira. You know, he lives out in Vegas, and you know, he's an awesome old guy to have in the platoon. You know, and then the rest of the other guys in the platoon, you know, they're still active duty, so I'm not going to drop their names. You know, my boy Pepper was his nickname. He was like the perfect old guy to have because he was so hard on you. Like, you were just waiting for him to whoop your ass. But he also mentored and guided you and actually taught you stuff, you know. And it wasn't just, I'm going to hammer you because you're a new guy. He's like, I'm going to hammer you because you're a new guy, but show you what you need to be doing and why what you did was wrong. So I was fired up, super fired up. So we go out to the Chaws, you know, your first trip, super overwhelming. You know, you're just a little nervous as it is. And they even told us, like, hey, this is usually a trip where you want it to be halfway or towards the end so you can get a solid grasp for what you're doing and grow. But we got after it. It was awesome. Like I said, all the, you know, the older guys were solid. We had a really weak LPO, and he actually got fired on that trip. So that was a little just, you know, a little concerning to me at first. I'm like, okay, my first LPO, and then he's a complete turd.
It's one of the myths of definitely of the SEAL teams is when you're coming in, you think every guy is a hardened combat warrior, and then you get in and you look at some guys and you go, wait a second, that's not who I was thinking I was going to be working with. Yeah. And of course, on the other end of the spectrum, you meet guys where you're like, I want to be like that guy. So you guys wrap through that work up and
Yeah.
you go on your first deployment. How was that first deployment? You went to Iraq on your first deployment, right?
Yeah, well, for the second half. First half, went to Guam,
Mm-hmm.
which was disheartening.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, dude, there's a war going on. Let's go to war. Oh, cool, you're going to go to Guam. But, it's part of it. It's just part of it,
Part of the mission.
Part of the mission.
Yeah, again, military people deploy all over the world all the time to maintain stability, and that includes all units of the military, even special operations. So SEALs, sometimes you get deployed to places where there's no, really visible threat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's not what SEALs generally want to do.
Yeah. So we did training. We cross-trained with a couple different countries. Some other platoon went to the PI. We were in Guam. We went to Thailand to work with the Thai SEALs for 9 days. And, it was cool getting to see how other countries do stuff. And now that I look back at it, it did give me a much bigger picture, overview of stuff. But at the time, like, I'm not even 21.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm just wanting to get after it, And I didn't for the first half, but then we rip and we go to Iraq. I'm like, yes, going to Iraq. Well, I knew what we were headed over there to do, but I was hoping there'd be, the ability to do a lot of different stuff, and ended up doing personal security for some higher dignitaries over there during the elections. And it was cool. Looking back now, you look at what you did and you put that on your resume. People are like, what? Wow, you did that? To me, I was thinking, well, yeah, that sucked, but it didn't. It was also very good. It's a very good learning experience. And it was part of the mission. And the problem is when they had a gap in that protection, some team guys came to do it, and team guys do what they do, and they just knocked it out of the park. So guess what? Team guys now have the mission for that. And but it was cool. We worked with some different units, some Marines and Army guys, and they were phenomenal over there as well. And it was awesome to be able to learn from them. Guys have been on their a couple deployments already, and the war hasn't really even kicked off. And it was good. And then our chief got fired. I was just like, jeez. But the head shed was solid. Like our OIC, AOIC, who became the Delta Platoon commander, solid dudes, And so we just had to weed out some of the weak ones.
Right on. And that's the nature of that mission, is defense. And I don't want to be on defense ever, right? I want to be on offense. That's where I want to be. So it was a tough mission for the guys to of course, you'd never know this from their professionalism, but no one was jumping up and down saying, hey, great, we get to be on defense all the time for a long period of time. And the fact that the guys did perform so well and that we kept the mission, again, like you said, we kept the mission because we did a good job, not that we were jumping up and down excited about doing it, because we don't even be on defense. We want to be on offense.
Yeah, absolutely. And now I look back, I'm like, some of the things, and I did get to do a pretty cool thing there. And then, we got to see all of Iraq, I got to go up to northern Iraq, up in Kurdistan. And,
oh yeah, because those dignitaries were traveling around.
Well, he was Kurdish and he was from northern Iraq, and it was gorgeous up there, we actually, so I had a little come to Jesus talk with one of the older guys. He was just kind of reeling me back in because I wasn't very happy. I was pissed that other guys were out doing direct actions, DAs, and I want to be doing that. And my boy Pepper, he talked to me and he sat me down. And he's like, man, this is a big picture thing, and this is part of it. He's like, and you're a new guy. He's like, I know you want to get after it. I know you're aggressive, but it's a good deal, yes, it's not the ideal thing that we want to do. He's like, but this is not a bad deal. We're in civilian clothes and fully armored SUVs, getting to travel around with this guy. And he just was like, you just need to change your mindset, and he's like, you need to stay focused because after this deployment, it might be something completely different, and he's like, just stay the course, stay focused, and, get the mission done. And it was an awesome talk. I needed that, I just needed that guidance and mentorship because I was young,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Pepper's an older guy. He had a good amount of experience, and he just knew what I needed to hear, and roughed me up a little bit and continued on. Man, it was good. It was awesome. Learned a lot from it. So
yeah. So you get back from that deployment.
Yep.
And this is when this is when we formed up, when we started working together.
Yes, sir.
In TU Bruiser.
Yep. again.
You went
I come back from deployment, and then all of a sudden it was like, hey, we need snipers. I'm like, how fast does my hand get up for this one, you know? And literally gone, like, again, within a week. And went through the NSW short course, which, you know, we didn't get our sniper certificates from that because we didn't do everything, but I didn't care. You're giving me sniper guns. You know, and I know how to use them. They're doped in. I get to kill savages. Okay, you know.
You know what's crazy is, remember when they used to try and they had rules about how much we could be gone from home?
Yeah.
Remember those days?
Oh, we violated all
those. Yes, we violated them, but then young guys in the teams and a lot of old guys too, they literally are raising their hand for everything. Like, oh, yeah, get me out of here, man. Oh, you're going to send me that school? Oh, you're going to send me on another deployment? And it's weird because there's some people that, you know, a guy that's married and has a family, they don't want to do that anymore, and they shouldn't have to. But they blanket apply the rules across the board to everybody. Because I'll tell you what, when you're 19 years old and you're in the SEAL teams, you don't want to be at home any night of the week. You want to be either on deployment or getting trained and getting after it. And that's what's awesome.
Yeah.
But they blanket those rules, which is a bummer.
Yeah. I mean, I was just fired up. And to be able to go to sniper school,
yeah.
You know, like, because, you know.
It's a big deal.
It's a huge
big deal to get to go to sniper school.
Huge deal. And one of the older guys in the platoon, he's still active in the team, so I won't say his name, but he was one of my really good buddies, and I really looked up to him. We did an awesome mission together on that first deployment. And
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
He's one of my favorite guys.
The Badger.
Yeah.
The Badger. And, you know, he's just an awesome guy, and he was a sniper, you know, and he would always talk to me about little things. And I was just, and even before I went, he was like teaching me stuff, and he's like, yeah, you know, this. So I don't know if he had a say in me going there or what, but I went. I was super excited. And then also Chris, you know, Chris was a big influence as well. As you know, he was a successful sniper on his second deployment, first deployment.
From Fallujah.
Yeah, and you're just hearing about what he's doing in Fallujah, and I was like, please, Lord, like, I just want to do this so badly. And you hear Chris, you know, telling stories, and hear other people telling stories about Chris, you know. And I even had a buddy who was back from Sacramento. He was a Marine, he was the Marine officer in charge of Chris and those guys over there. So he's telling me stories that were just like, I was like, what?
You're like,
dude, this is awesome. And so anyways, we go through the short course. It was legit. It was in the summer, out in the mountains, in the desert, doing everything. Guys are blacking out on their stalks because it's 120 degrees and you're trying to do a 4-hour stalk in a ghillie suit. But which was awesome because it prepared us for Ramadi. It's like, dude, the worst stuff, you know, you're just okay, you know, and, you know, had a great time. The instructors were pretty solid, you know, and then all of a sudden it was like, because we had a condensed workup, you know, they're like, hey, we got to get going. So normally what it would take 18 months, we had to condense into 11 months. And, you know, all of a sudden then we're headed out to
our desert training facility.
For our first trip.
Yeah. And that's where we met for the first time.
First met. Yeah. I had heard about this guy, Jocko. And guys were fired up because they're like, dude, this guy is fired up. He's just another, you know, thing. It was just this bigger, stoic guy that was professional, who had a good amount of experience in the teams, and who just wanted to get in the fight. And I was like, yes, this is what we need. You know,
it was pretty apparent when I first met you that you wanted to get in the fight too.
Yeah, I might have been bandaged up a little bit from smashing out a car window.
Yeah,
but you know, yeah, some idiots downtown and spit on my.
What were you saying? I was saying to you when I saw that.
So when you saw it, you know, you're like, hey, I'm Jocko. I was like, I'm JP. You're like, I know who you are. And I was like, roger that. You know, it's kind of like, okay. And you're like, so what's up with the wrist? And I was like, I got a couple stitches. And you're like, from what? I was like, you know, smashed out a car window with my elbow and I got caught. He's like, huh, you gonna stop doing that stupid shit? I'm like, yeah. He's like, you need to be training here with the guys and with us and focused on workup. And he's like, if you want to fight, we fight, you know? And I was like, roger that, sir. And I was like, I'm going to go work out. And so, because I remember I was walking to the gym. You know, I just changed out the bandages. I had stitches and staples in my arm. And I had all bandaged up and trying to get after it. I was going to go work out. And there I see the silverback gorilla. So it was awesome. It was good. You know, you just set the precedence. You know, you set the tone for, hey, yeah, it's cool to be aggressive and want to fight and get after it, but you do it in the right place and the right time. And don't forget, you know, at the end of the day, we're going to war to kill bad guys. That's the number one focus.
Yeah.
And it was just like, that just kind of really opened up my eyes. So it was cool.
Yeah, and that workup was awesome.
Dude, so excited. Yeah, it was so much fun. I mean, just the energy there. I mean, everyone was ready to get after it. And you drove it in all of us, you know. I remember you coming up to me when we were in between IADs, and you're like, hey, every time like someone gets a door, I want you to be the dude that's as loud as possible. You told me to go to tape JP on the back of my helmet. You're like, I always want to be able to find you. And you know, maybe you did, maybe you didn't, but
I did. I mean, that's legit right there.
Oh.
So hey, I'll tell you right now, I say this all the time. Well, I shouldn't say I say this all the time, but there's people that have certain qualities, right? Certain qualities, whether they're leadership qualities, whether they're skills at art or at speaking or at basketball, right? People have certain qualities.
Yep.
Well, you had a good ability. You had a great ability to get command of something and make something happen very quickly, right? And it's because you're loud. You're loud. Number one. Number two, you're aggressive. Number three, you can take whatever that problem is and like get it into some quick words. You can simplify it into something quickly and say it.
Yeah.
And as soon as I saw that you could do that, because we have to get people to perform fairly complex things in chaotic situations. But when I saw that you had that skill, I said, okay, he's a guy that I can utilize, and that his platoon commander can utilize, and that the whole troop can utilize to handle such certain situations when there's some chaos going on and something needs to be straightened out. So what I want you to do is take some riggers tape, and I want you to write JP on your helmet. So whenever I'm looking around on my night vision or during the daytime, and you just see a bunch of helmets that look the same, now I know it's JP. When I see him coming, I go, JP, make this happen right here. And JP can make it happen right there.
I still have that helmet with the tape.
Boom.
Sitting in my garage on the shelf.
That's awesome.
Kind of cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we get obviously orders 2 weeks prior to deployment that we're going to Ramadi. We had thought we were going somewhere else. We thought we were going to Baghdad. We thought we were going to have kind of a cookie cutter deployment of what the teams had been doing for a few years. And we find out 2 weeks before deployment that we're going to Ramadi. And how did you find out? Did I call? Did the Delta Platoon commander, the chief, call you? How did you find out we were going to Ramadi? Because you guys were all on leave. You remember?
I don't think they even told us until we got back.
Not even told you guys.
I mean, because it was all over the news what was going on over there. You know, so I don't think they told us.
Yeah, I probably didn't tell. I know back. I told the leaders.
Yeah.
And said, hey guys, stand by to get some.
Yeah. Yeah, because I remember we found out we were on leave. We came home, came back to San Diego, and we were getting to roll out. And that's when we found out where we're going. And we were getting ready, and we all had our families. We had our families, the day we're shipping off to say goodbye. And there's a couple guys like reading like news reports and articles about the area we're going to. And I'm like trying to like pull my mom away so she doesn't hear this, you know what I mean? And my dad's just like listening, like getting fired up. He's like, yes. And, my dad, you could tell as a father, he's very excited for me. My mom's terrified, nervous. But my dad was nervous as well. Rightfully so, like your son's going off to war and combat. But it was this mix of emotions for him. And so he was trying to hide like the nervousness by saying, when are you leaving? Come on, we've been waiting. It's about time for you to go. And I'm like,
get out of here.
Jeez.
I just remembered when I got told, when they said when the commanding officer brought me in, and he's and he was trying to sell to me going to Ramadi instead of going to Baghdad. He's like proposing it as like, hey, this could be a good thing. And inside, I'm like, oh my God, I'm like so. And I remembered I bargained for something. There's something that I said, well, we want this. If we can do this, then we can make it happen. I think it was gear, some kind of gear swap we did. Yeah. But anyways, I remember them trying to sell it to me, and I knew I was in such a good position because it's like someone trying to sell you free money. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, you want us to go to money? Okay. Let me think about that for a second. And inside, I'm going, don't blow it. Just act cool.
Yeah, poker face.
Don't get too excited. Just maybe you might be able to leverage something. Just relax inside. I'm like, okay, I think we can make it happen. and I need a little bit of this. And I might need a couple more support personnel out there to give us a hand getting acclimated and getting the turnover done. But if I can get 5 or 6 more personnel, I'm just gathering logistic support for my troop. That's what I was bargaining for.
So
I was
awesome.
gathering logistics support for the troop, getting more CBs to come help us and more intel guys. I'm like, as long as we can have this and that. And he's like, yeah, I'll talk to them. We'll see if we can make it happen. And it happened.
Yeah. The CO was awesome. Solid dude.
Yeah.
So solid. I remember, because I got in trouble when I went home on leave during Christmas time.
Am I seeing some kind of a pattern of trouble here?
Or, if you want to say that.
You know
fine.
what?
But
Here's
I
the
just,
deal. One of my best friends
didn't have the outlets.
One of my best friends in the SEAL team when I was younger, right? We were the same way. We were maniacs. And one time he got in really big trouble. And the platoon commander, who's one of my favorite guys and the guy that inspired me to go the officer route because he was a prior enlisted guy and he was an awesome guy and he made the platoon awesome for us. That guy, so I'm thinking he must be so angry at my buddy that got in big trouble, like borderline international incident. And I kind of said, hey, are you mad at him for what happened, or what do you think of this? And he said something along the lines of, he's a warrior. You can't stop these things from happening. It's in your guys' blood. We have to just deal with it the best we can.
Yeah, and you guys did.
That was always my attitude.
I look back now, I'm 33, and I'm like, man. But, you learn from your mistakes. And you make sure you don't, pay them again. I was up in Reno. I got arrested for, that older guy started a fight with me and my friends. And I was with non-team guy friends. They're super passive guys. And he's an older, much bigger guy, and, was coming at me. He had a bottle in his hand. It was just, anyways, do some damage to him. He ends up in the hospital for a long time. I get rolled up. I get arrested. I go there. They're looking through my wallet. They're like, security clearance, SEAL Team 3. And I'm like, yeah. And the cop goes, why didn't you tell me this when we're out there? He's like, I would have dropped you off around the corner. I was like, well, I didn't want, I'm not going to try to pull that card. I made a mistake. He's like, well, you're here now, so we have to deal with it. So I go home. I remember I tell the LPO about it. He's like, all right, we got to go tell Chief. And Chief's like, all right, we got to go tell the OIC. We got to go tell the Command Master Chief. And Ops Master Chief was Press On and Bro. 2 phenomenal leaders. I mean, just
Absolutely.
Couldn't get better, higher enlisted leaders ever, right?
Yep.
So, of course, they're hearing the story, and they kind of, give me the rundown. And then, Master Chief Press On goes, JP, you think you're the first team guy to get arrested for fighting? Let me tell you some stories. And he just he's like, hey, we got to fix this. You know what I mean? He's like, obviously, it was clearly self-defense. And he's like, whatever you need from us.
Yeah.
That was good. Cool, whatever. What I do is I make the mistake is I go back home on Christmas leave shortly after that, and I got a wet and reckless. So not a DUI, but, whatever, close enough. I was an idiot. And, I'm Superman. I'm only 22. I'm not even 23 yet. And, we were crushing the work up. So it was I felt even better about life and everything else like that. And we know we're going to war. And, I just made a mistake and, pay the consequences. I come home and I'm like, oh, dude, what do I do? I'm like, they're going to kill me. I was like, I'm possibly not going to deploy. And I remember I broke down. I just broke down, emotionally. I'm like, I just threw everything away, for what, And I was really upset. And I went and told the Badger, about it first. I was like, hey, man, I need some advice. I was like, I think I can take leave and take care of this on my own and everything. He goes, yeah, I think we can. He's like, but if not, that's a big risk, He's like, dude, we have solid leadership right now. Now's the time that you just get your butt kicked for this and just deal with it, He's like, dude, just take what comes at you. And I'm like, all right, bro. I was sick to my stomach. I was like, well, I don't know how this is going to turn out. We go to the LPO. Dude, he's like, you blah, blah. I'm like, right, yep, roger that. Go to the chief. Chief, same thing. I'm like, Go AOIC. It was Andrew Paul. And Andrew Paul was like, JP, really? He was what hurt is how disappointed he was. Everyone was disappointed. You're better than that. And I was, And then so we go back over there to go talk to Master Chief Yarbrough and Presson. And I was just like, I was so ashamed. Like I was just, I just got the chills. I was disgusted with myself, So, they go through and they're like, all right, well, we're going to have a Chiefs review board. See if you get to keep your trident and stay in the teams. I was just like trying not to throw up right then and there. I'm like, go back to platoon space. Like, how do you even function the rest of the day after that? Like, I was like, so I'm looking at the badger. I'm like, maybe we shouldn't have said this. You know what I mean? I was like, dude. So anyways, long story short, they had the Chiefs review board. And luckily, they were doing remodeling over at the compound. So I was 2 rooms over, but the ceilings were open and vaulted.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So I could hear them all talking about me beforehand. And, of course, you had a bunch of, it was all the Chiefs in the command. And, there were some Chiefs there that, were support personnel. They're like, screw this kid. Let's blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. And then, Yarbrough goes, hold up. Yeah. The kid's a good kid. I was with him at SQT. He made a mistake. And so, I remember him taking my back because he's like, oh, really? Let's get rid. And he starts pulling up, other guys that had made mistakes. He's like, well, what about when you did this? And what about when you did that? He's like, no, he's good. And Presson's like, nope, we're keeping him. We're going to crush him, but we're keeping him. So I go in there, and luckily I'd heard that. And so I went in there and just, faced the man. And, the whole rest of workup, I was on restriction. We're on the road. We're awesome trips. We're going to Vegas for a work trip. And guess who has a curfew?
Did you have a curfew during that?
Oh.
I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. If I was to go get food, I had to be back within a certain time frame. Yeah. You're like, oh, wait, actually, guess what? They serve food here, so you don't need to leave the building. You can get room service because you don't need to be sitting down at the tables. And I'm like, yeah, but whatever. I dealt with it.
It's good that you had that kind of sense of fear in there. I mean, just looking back, I can tell you right now, you could have committed a broad series of crimes against humanity, and I would have still taken you on deployment. And I basically told bro that for sure. Hey, I don't give a shit.
Yeah. It's just, I was very lucky and blessed. We were blessed to have, good leaders like you and bro and Presson and those guys that were just like, hey man, guys make mistakes. We're gonna fix it. It's not like you guys are like, oh, no big deal. You're like, oh, cool. Hey,
you got to learn.
You got to learn from it, And I definitely learned from it. And the CO was super cool. And the CO stood by what you guys stood, and that said a lot to me about him as a leader as well, because he trusted your guys' judgment. Yeah. And I remember he comes out towards the end of our deployment when we've been getting it the whole time. He's like, man, I'm really glad I listened to them and kept you around. So it was just awesome. It all kind of turned around because it was basically you guys were like, hey, we're going to hold it where it's at, and we'll see how he does on deployment. And when he comes back, we'll hammer him, and if we need to. So
yeah. All right, so we go on deployment.
Yep.
And like you said, people are reading the newspaper. I mean, I knew because I was reading all the intel. I mean, I was totally read in and was trying to explain to you guys and telling you guys stand by to get some. We show up there and do some. Basically, the forces almost instantly, we divide into 5 different teams, and we end up doing big operation over in eastern Ramadi, and that kind of set the tone and carved out a little space for a certain crew. And actually, in the retirement speech that I gave, I talk about, hey, we're going to send some guys over here. If you want to go volunteer, you got to put your name on this list. And, of course, everyone put their name on the list, which made it go back to the original plan, which was the Delta platoon commander saying, these are the guys I'll take. I need 8 guys. I'll take these guys. Yeah. And, had a little, make sure that we weren't making anything too unbalanced. But obviously he wanted you with him. And so you guys roll out to Corregidor with the first of the 506 Band of Brothers.
Yeah, those guys are phenomenal.
Yeah.
Love those guys.
Talk about Full Metal Jacket.
A blown out old school.
Yeah.
I think it was an old school or like a university.
It was like a university, I think.
Old university, just completely blown out, walls. I mean, there's more bags of sand than concrete, I think, there holding the place up. We had the Army and Marines living with us in there. And I remember we show up and we're just like, dude.
Yeah, when I went there for that big first kickoff, Yeah, that place was just dirt floors,
Yeah.
mosquitoes everywhere, bugs everywhere.
Yeah.
I don't even think there was AC.
No, there wasn't.
It was like one dangling light in every room.
Yeah.
That was hard living.
But that was all one big room. They had like a sheet of plywood that divided the big room that we all ended up eventually like building our own rooms into.
Yeah.
I remember getting over there and guys were like I was so fired up. I'm like, yes, I'm in it. Like, this is horrible. It's horrible because there's a fight going on right here. You know what I mean? Like the nice built up bases, there's not a fight there. No. Where it's like horrible, there's a fight. I was just super excited.
Yeah, Craigador was awesome, and there was guys with the first to 506. That place was getting mortared every day. That place was getting attacked every day. I mean, remember when we first went there, and it's like I said, guys are like, can we go up on the walls? Can snipers go up on the walls and like defend? And I was like, yes.
And we did.
Yeah, you guys went up and started whacking people almost immediately.
It was awesome. You didn't even have to leave base to kill guys.
Yeah. What kind of a joy is that right there?
It's like the best Christmas present ever. But it was also the same time. It's like if you want to go grab chow, you have to be in full body armor, helmet, and your gun because the gun got constantly attacked. There's a couple times you hear doom, doom, and you just hear the incoming mortars, and you're sprinting to try to either you're like, when you're in the middle, you're like, do I go back? Do I go to the chow hall? Are they aiming for our building this time? I remember this one time I was going out to take a shower.
Decisions.
I know.
Decisions.
Just make one and go. And this was a complete, I had my angels, God thing, and we come back from an op, and guys are smoked, right? And most guys are just like, I'm just going to get into bed, like my baby wipe shower, and just lay down. I just wanted to actually just go take a shower, right? And so the Army guys are awesome. They gave us the code so we could use it on our times when we came back, instead of the standard scheduled Army shower times.
Yep.
So I go out there, and I get to the shower tent. I'm like, I forgot my loofah sponge, so I can actually like try to like wash with my soap and everything.
Hardcore JP Dinnell. In combat, you know what you got to bring to combat with you? You got to bring your loofah sponge. That's what I'm talking about.
You gotta clean the body. You know what I mean? So anyways, I go back, and as I'm walking back up the steps to get into the thing, shower tent gets hit by 3 mortars. Man. And I was, destroyed, gone. Like, I was just like, okay.
That was the shower tent that was like 20 meters from Full Metal Jacket, right?
Yeah. I legitimately was just like in there, and I was like, oh. I remember I was like, I'll just put the soap in my hands, and I was like, nope. That was complete. I had my angels. God was like, no, you need to get out of here. And so I walk back, and I'm literally taking the last step like into that little dark hallway, and I was like, okay, where's my baby wipes? So like, I have to go get some baby. And that's what was so crazy is like something like that. It was just like, okay, shit, now I'm pissed. And so baby wiped it up, and until we got that fixed, we were doing bottled water showers. You poke holes in the top of a water bottle, and your buddy squeezes it over you, and that's how we showered.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah. And that's another thing. The Army guys from the 1st to 506, I mean, obviously they're living that way too, but every day you'd see them, they're always in the squared away uniforms, always, shaving every day, no slack, no fucking slack whatsoever to the 1st to 506. And that was the attitude that you guys went over with,
I made sure our guys had shaved heads because I was the acting LPO. The Badger was the acting chief, and we rocked the Army camis.
Yeah, we put you guys in Army uniforms.
Army camis, and we all had shaved heads, and we shaved every day. We just looked like the Army. I mean, because who cares about a haircut and a shave? Unless I needed to have a beard, which, I mean, I have a red beard, so who am I blending in with? Russians or Irish? You know what I mean? Like, I'm in Iraq, you know what I mean? Like, bright blue eyes and a red beard. Oh, you must be a local.
We're being attacked by leprechauns. Yeah. Giant leprechauns.
The giant tattooed leprechauns. And so, we just shaved our heads and got after it. And, I mean, dude, why? That doesn't matter. That doesn't make you a less effective, either way, and you could tilt that, you could flip side that the other way. It's like, hey, well, if I have long hair and a beard, what does that matter? Well, it really doesn't, but it's the Army's battle space, and we respected and loved those guys. They were phenomenal guys to work for. So why are we going to do something that is just to piss them off. Why? Who cares? Like, so we just shaved and, kept our heads shaved, which was awesome actually, because your helmet stuck to that like a little Brillo pad, and it didn't move around a lot. And and then the Marines that were with us, the Anglo guys, those phenomenal guys, they started doing the same thing. They're shaving their heads. And my boy Nick Hobbs, he was with us. He's out. He's an awesome stud Marine. And, we always joke about, he's like, man, like, he's like, I just remember we all just would hang out in our free time. And he's like, you come really close with somebody when they're standing in their like boxer briefs and you're having to pour water over them for them to shower. And we're up on the rooftop, right? Like doing bottles of water shower. And it's just funny, man. Like I miss those days.
Yeah. Yeah. And just so everybody knows now, I mean, just to kind of give an overview, if you don't know, what the overall operations that were taking place were, pushing in the Camp Corregidor, which we've been talking about, which is where this building Full Metal Jacket was on eastern Ramadi. And the 1st of the 506 was responsible for the eastern part of Ramadi, really the southeastern, and then some other sections. But where the SEAL platoon was, or the SEAL squad now, is basically a smaller group, was working, was inside this area called the Malab district. And as the first of the 506 would do big clearance operations, you guys would go out and primarily do sniper overwatch. Although you did other stuff, you did clearances and all that, but the primary mission, thank God you went to sniper school, because you were the lead sniper and you did a lot of sniper work over there.
Yeah, it was awesome. We got just right place, right time. It was just. That's all I can really explain. Now we worked to get work, and we pushed the envelope constantly, but I mean, we're no better than anybody over there. We were just hungry. We wanted it so bad. And I remember when we showed up there, the colonel, won't say his name, but he was awesome.
Awesome.
I mean, I wish he was running for president.
Absolutely.
I mean,
I would vote for him, and obviously I would vote for him instantly.
Yeah.
He was just unbelievable.
Go
leader.
on the campaign trail, like in a heartbeat.
No doubt about it.
Anyways, awesome guy. And, you talk about communication from leadership. You talk about a guy that
can't say his name, by the way. He's a general now. It's very obvious who it is, the commander of the 1st of 506 during the Battle of Ramadi.
Okay.
A guy by the name of Ron Clark was just an unbelievable leader, and an unbelievable leader.
Yeah, Ronald Clark, 2020.
Yeah.
But awesome guy. But he had the ability to communicate with us to where we wanted to help him.
Of course.
And he was just like, hey guys, I need help. And that's one thing I learned later on in life, is like, when I was doing sales, I'm like, people don't want to be helped, but they want to help. And he knew that, and so he's like, guys, I need help. We're losing guys every day. This is what we're going on. Hey, here's your ROEs. Please go get some. And we're like, oh, yes, like this is it. And we had that connection with them. And, just being able to go out and work for them was phenomenal. Yeah. And it was awesome. I mean,
the Delta platoon commander formed such a good relationship with those guys, and my relationship with him.
Yeah.
I mean, he was just
solid dude
and wanted to get after it.
Yes.
wanted to get after it as much as humanly possible.
Yeah. And then some.
And then a little bit more.
Yeah.
And with a little bit more on top of that. So, yeah, it was a great combination. And you did a lot of those operations, too. So,
yeah,
kind of the standard, well, we call them standard. It wasn't that standard at the time.
Daytime presence patrols get some, and when I did that, I carried the Mark 46, 5.56 belt fed action, and it was awesome. You have 200 rounds on the gun, and I threw another 800 rounds on my front, and I had another 200 in the back. So 1,200 rounds with body armor, grenades, smokes, water.
And that's when I was telling that story in the beginning. It's like one of those first big operations we did out there, and that's where that's from. That's where that memory's from, is seeing you walking and being, okay, I guess all those way that he acted during training with paintball, he's going to act the same way right here with his life on the line.
Either walked, it was cool because I either walked point or rear security, because I was a machine gunner, and you want a machine gun up front and you want one in the back because they're coming from the rear. And I just remember that, first push that you were talking about, the first real firefight I got into, just cut these dudes in half, and it was awesome. And you know, it was, you know, everything the colonel told us was going to happen. Hey, usually within this amount of time frame, they start coming out. Here's what they do. They come around the corner, then they distract you, and they do this, and this is when the attack happens. And like clockwork. I mean, these savages were just coming at us exactly how we were told it was going to come at us.
Yeah.
And I think that helped us gain even more respect for the Army that we worked for, because they could have just been like, hey, go get some. But they're like, hey, go get some and come back so you can continue getting some.
Yeah, no, the turnover that we would get from those guys was phenomenal. And the professionalism that they had, like what you're talking about, like the Charlie Company commander, Crazy Joe.
Yeah.
And he was freaking awesome. And one of the things that he would do, and this is when I said, oh, this guy's on the next level. He's doing something that I never even thought of. Every time he went on patrol in the Malab, he was recording it. He was video recording it. And then he'd come back and review every street corner, every building, every signpost. He knew everything about it. He knew that city. He took his job like so seriously. Yeah. It was phenomenal.
I remember the Delta Platoon commander had told me that he was doing that, or we knew that, and it really emphasized us to, hey, we need to know this area just as well. Yeah. And it didn't take long. I'm not trying to be cocky or anything, but within a couple of weeks, like, I didn't need my map. Like, I knew that city. You know what I mean? Like, now I had the map on me too. Of course. So if I needed to look at it and be like, oh, I'm at this building, and hey, we're pushing over here, so I can scan real quick and go. But like, I knew exactly where I was at all times, because those guys did, and we needed to know that. You can't have a delay in communication when you're in a firefight, you know, or if guys are down, you know. And it was just, I remember when, you know, just hearing over the radio when Cowie got shot, just like, I'll never forget that, you know, and knowing exactly where they were at. And there was a little confusion leaving, and I was like, no, we need to go this way. And legitimately just started running that way, you know, because you just hear Mikey opening up and the Badgers trying to pull him out, and your boys are in a firefight, and you just don't know what's going to happen. And we're trying to get there as fast as we could, and it was just like, we legitimately got there as fast as we could, and it was because we knew we had to be prepared, you know. And could you imagine if we didn't know where exactly they were, or where we were, and you're just sitting there like trying to listen to a map, you know, read a map, when you hear your boy over the radio like, hey, I've been shot, and you just hear a huge machine gun just going off, and you're just like, whew. Like, but dude, the boys we were with, Delta Platoon Commander, deep breath, JP, where we at? You know, he knew where we're at, but he's like, hey, where do we need to go? You know, exactly. And, you know, because he could have gotten us there, but he wanted me to get us there because I was the point
he's thinking about other things.
And
trust
he
me.
doesn't need to be worried about that, because he's working 2 radios, trying to get in, you know, he's got to figure out like, hey, let's get some tanks in here to mow the city down to get our boy out and get him to the hospital, you know. And so
the story that JP's talking about right there is like the first significant casualty that we had. We had some other guys get fragged a little bit, but that was the first one. Cowie. Cowie got shot and about lost his leg, but they were able to save it. And now he's a stud. Yeah. Still.
Yep.
But yeah.
What is it? Cheetahs or leopards don't lose their spots.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
He's still a warrior inside and out. Solid.
Yeah.
Solid dude.
He's the guy I tell the story about where, like, when I went to see him in Charlie Med, so he's all morphined up. We rolled in there, and I like went to shake his hand like a bro handshake, and like when he reached up, he grabbed my hand, and he like pulls me down, right, and he's like in my ear, and he goes, "Let me stay."
Oh yeah, he was.
I'm like, hey bro,
you're about to lose your leg.
I didn't tell him that.
Yeah.
But I was like, hey bro, let's make sure you get healed up, and I think you're gonna have to leave to do that. And he's like, just let me stay. He goes, I don't care. I'll clean, you know, but just let me stay. Yeah. And I was like, bro, it's just go get healed up. If you have to go get healed up. We'll bring you back. And of course, he didn't heal up fast enough because it was pretty jacked up. He got an armor-piercing round in his leg that entered like down by his knee and exited up by his groin.
Yeah, it hit the femur, right? Yeah, and just traveled.
Dude,
I mean,
it was nasty.
He's lucky to have his leg.
Absolutely.
I mean, he's legitimately lucky. So
I've got to get him on the podcast sometime. His whole life is awesome. All right. Well, you know what? I was thinking. There's one more op that I was thinking of besides the kind of urban sniper operations you were doing and presence patrols. You did a cool op that was a little bit more like Leif and I were talking about how oh, you know what? It's not like you see in the movies, because with these sniper Overwatch positions, we'd have a bunch of people with us. We have 20, 15, 20, 10, 30 people. You have a lot of people to be in these buildings and hold security and all that. Whereas in the movies, they always portray like 2 guys out in the middle of nowhere. Mm-hmm. And we always go, yeah, no, that's not that realistic. But you guys actually did one off like that.
Yeah, we did. It
Full
was
on.
Full on. It was pretty awesome. Yeah, so up in northern Sophia, we're getting just hammered by mortars, just constantly. We knew that's where they're coming from. So we get dropped off at a little outstation north of, the Malab district, and we just did a patrol. It was a long patrol up there. And I remember, we're, hugging the river, trying to stay as close to the river as we can. It's, you go from the dry, just dead city to this lush vegetation, and you're trying to patrol through that. And I'm just like, dude, hands, like, all the guys in Vietnam, all those guys that just got after it, like, I've always respected them, but that just brought a new level of respect, like, because we have night vision. They didn't most of the time, and it was just like...
And it is hard for people to understand that area north of Ramadi that was, like, well irrigated by the river, by the Euphrates River, it looked like Vietnam.
Yeah.
It had palm trees. It had, like, paddies and dikes and all that stuff. It looked like Vietnam.
Yeah.
And Leif was talking about the other day, and he's like, yeah, there was, like, the bull pulling a plow type situation. Straight up looked like Vietnam.
Yeah, it was crazy. So anyways, we go up there. And, man, we had dogs that were following us. So, I can't say his name. He's still in, but he carried a suppressed MP5 with subsonic rounds. Mm-hmm. So he was our dog killer. Mm-hmm. And, it was pretty funny. And so he just, these are bad savage dogs, so don't worry. And so we're getting up there, they're, barking, giving away our location. So we, handle them. We keep going. And we get set up at night, and we get all OP set up, and we're right on the river. Like, that's right on the river, because we know if we need the boats to come in and support us, they can come in. We can get a fast extract out of there, and so me and the Badger, we have change out into all of our stuff. Like we're carrying gear for like 3 to 4 days, mm-hmm. right? Like, it's almost physically impossible to carry that much water. Mm-hmm. Like, and all your ammo and everything else like that. And so we get it done, and we change out, get in our ghillie suits. And I just remember, like, thinking, like, dude, this is legit.
This is it.
Like, you see, like, the ambient light, like, coming in through the trees where we're all, like, hidden and vegged up, and the guys are set their perimeter. We're in our ghillie suits, and we just, boom. And one of the other guys was like, dude, it was awesome. You guys were there, and we're turning around. He goes, and you guys are gone. Like, you just disappeared in the dark, and, we went and got set up, And like I said, the Badger was, he was a sniper before, so I learned a lot from him. But at this time, we both had a good amount of experience of actually on the gun and whatnot. And so he was, no ego with him. What I mean? He's just awesome. So, like, easy back. He's like, hey, man, this is what we're going to do. What do you think? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And then they're saying, I'm like, hey, maybe we should change up that. He's like, all right, yeah, let's do that. And so we end up vegging up in this area that, I mean, it was the only, the opportunity for where we had to be wasn't ideal. Mm-hmm. We legitimately were on the other side of these bushes out in the open. There was like thick bushes around us, so we could veg up and blend in, but we were out there by ourselves, and we knew that. And after we did our recon, we told the guys, like, hey, this is the only place we can go. This is legitimately like the only place we can go to be able to, get these guys. And so our contingency was, if something happened, we were going to have to wait a while before the guys could actually move to a position to provide cover fire and, everything else like that. And we're like, all right, cool, not a big deal, And so we're like, cool, we have our pistols and sniper rifles, you know what I mean? And so we go off, we get vegged up, we, help veg each other, get ourselves into position. Rifles are laying like kind of underneath the drag bags, which are vegged up. And we had our pistols out just because, I mean, I know people can't see us right now, but there's the distance from me to you. We had people walking past us. Mm-hmm. And it was just one of those things.
So 3, 4, 5 meters away is
5 meters.
There's people walking by.
Yeah, just walking by us. And we're out there, all throughout the night, the day. It's one of those things where you're like, all right, I have to pee. you're not trying to drink too much water because you don't have to use it, but at the same time, you're like, it's hot, so I need to. Luckily, since it is that hot and you're in a ghillie suit, you're sweating most of it out anyways, but, a couple times we had to pee, so you, like, slightly roll over, dig a hole, relieve yourself, cover back up, and lay back on top of it, and it was good, though. We actually we got mortared at that position, and we got lucky. We definitely had our angels there because, it messed up our radios temporarily, and everything around us was just kind of tore up, like all the bushes and everything, and we didn't get hit by one thing. And, it was just like, hey, what do we do? Do we stay here? Do we move them? Well, our radios were jacked up. So, luckily, they didn't move to us, and start laying down cover fire while we're trying to move back to them. So we just waited a little bit, made sure like we weren't trying to get suckered out or, ambushed or anything. And then we just slowly made our way back to the group. We told them what happened. I mean, dude, me and him were pretty jacked up from that. Like we were throwing up, like the blast and everything else.
Were
like
they 120s, you think?
Dude, honestly, I have no idea. There's a couple of them, but like
if they rocked you that hard, then they were big.
We were throwing up the whole patrol back.
Oh,
me
yeah,
and
they
him.
were big.
Yeah, I mean, we were both throwing up. We both had blood in our urine and stool.
Yeah.
After that, and it was just, I mean, yeah, it was, but whatever. I mean, we got the guys, and we called in counter stuff, and we came back, and everyone was happy because they didn't get mortared. The base didn't get mortared for a while. Because I remember after that, the laundry guys, these guys over there, they're doing the laundry, like they're so stoked that we did that, and we're like, man, we're stoked we got to do that. You know what I mean? That's awesome. They would come and pick up our laundry for us, and we're like, dude, no, we're good. Like, this is awkward. Like, you know what I mean? Like, go pick up your boys' laundry. Like, we're good. But it was really cool to be able to do that. Something completely outside the box that we hadn't been doing the whole time. So we were able to go from, and it just came from good planning. We had, like I said, we had solid leadership. So we had good plans in place.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was the amount of sustained combat operations for the whole task unit was damn, it was an incredible op tempo.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just like op every day to 1 unit, 2 unit, 3 elements going out, 4 elements. That's all the time.
Yeah.
So we start getting towards the end of this deployment. And obviously Mark got killed on August 2nd, and then September 29th, Mikey gets killed.
Yeah.
And we're not done operating by any stretch, because we did a bunch more operations, but it was definitely winding down at that point.
Yeah.
We had to start thinking about redeployment.
Yeah.
And
I mean, we were all packed up. I remember because we weren't out at Corregidor anymore.
Yeah, we had guys that were, you were one of the guys that had come back from Corregidor as we started trying to filter guys back to consolidate.
I was so mad I had to come back. I think about it every day when I feel this finger, because I cut my finger down to the bone, and they actually had to CASEVAC me out to go get surgery on my finger because they thought I was going to lose it, because we tried to work on it across the street at the AIDS station, which those guys are phenomenal combat medics over there. And when they were like, dude, we need a bird for you, you're going to lose your finger. Delta Platoon Commander and the Badger were like, dude, yeah, absolutely. So I went back, grabbed some gear, and, I feel that every day. It's just hard. Like that was the only op I wasn't on. And every time we went out, I always said a group prayer for the guys. It didn't matter if it was like, hey, we have to go right now. Delta Platoon Commander or the Badger or someone would be like, hey, we got to get JP real quick. And I'd say a group prayer, and we'd roll. And that was the only one that I wasn't a part of. And, Mikey was my AW gunner. He was always next to me when I was doing my sniper overwatches, and he was next to me when I was rocking point, because you needed an AW gunner. And JP might have gotten a little crazy towards the last half of the deployment and started to walk in point with the 300 Win Mag. And Mikey was there. And I wasn't there, you know? And I don't know. So.
Well, the good news is you got to go home with him.
Yes. Yeah. Got to escort his body home. Which was unlike anything else, you know? You're like, cool. You know, you get to be a part of that. But also at the same time, you're like, this is really shitty to be a part of. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's like, yeah, I wanted to be there and make sure everything went well. And I just remember us flying back and just staring at the flag over his coffin, you know. And some guys would, you know, lay next to the casket and we'd lean up against it. And yeah, it was just getting to bring him home was important to be a part of that. But, you know, everybody felt so much guilt. And we all try to keep each other accountable on that. You know, it's like, hey, man, this is war. You know, Mikey saved a lot of lives, you know, and we made an impact over there. And so it wasn't like it was for nothing. And what he did, I mean, the guys' lives that he saved, they all now have families and kids. You know, a couple of them had kids. Mikey had the easy out. And just like he always did, he never took the easy road. He took the harder road, the road that would actually make a difference. And this time it was the lives of those guys around him. And it was just the ride back. I mean, you're just thinking about all that. And, you know, it was also kind of a blur as well. You know, like I remember, you know, just rubbing the flag, you know. And the flag's always been very important to me. I remember graduating Hell Week and just seeing the flag fly. And then you hear it in the national anthem. And just seeing it over one of your boys' caskets was just brought a new level of connection and love for that amazing flag that we have. And I just remember I just sat there and I just would just rub the flag. Just rub it, you know, because I had flags that I carried with me on every deployment, every mission. I still do that sometimes. Like my wife, Amanda, I'll be doing something and I'll find a flag and I just kind of rub it. And she's like, she knows, you know, she's like, that's like my little trigger, you know, my trigger point. I just started thinking about things again. And, you know, I've taught my kids, Aiden, Cora, and Nola, to love and respect the flag. Like whenever they see a flag, they're like, Daddy, it's your favorite thing. It's Daddy's favorite thing, you know. They love getting American flag t-shirts and shorts. They saw some American flag cowboy boots. Of course, my daughters want those now. And I've been honest with my kids, you know. My boy Aiden, I call him my bonus boy. He's my stepson. I love him just like mine. You know, he asked me about the flag and why is it so important to me. And I've told him, I'm like, you know, it's been draped over a lot of caskets of my buddies that didn't make it home, that were killed overseas. And he's such a special kid. And he was just like, that makes sense. And, you know, and he sees a flag and I explained to him why a flag's at half mast. And he's even said, hey, I'm sorry that flag's at half mast. Like he doesn't know why, but he knows something happened. And he knows what it does to me and guys like you. The flag's at half mast, something horrible has happened. And he knows that, you know. And so I just remember, you know, I think he went to Bethesda. And then we continued on to San Diego. And just tried to mentally reset for a couple of days. You know, you're back in San Diego. It's awesome. But it just didn't...
Yeah.
It had nothing, you know, because you knew you're waiting to receive one of your boys' bodies, you know. So it didn't matter where we were. It didn't matter that we were in San Diego. Like we didn't want to be in San Diego. We wanted to be back overseas still, you know.
When we went to Habania to put him on the bird. And casket was open.
Yeah.
And we were just filing by.
Yeah.
And I remember you were ahead of me. And we were walking into like a mill van.
Yeah,
It wasn't like a one-way thing.
It was a cold mill van.
It was a cold mill van. And you were ahead of me. You know, you were literally right ahead of me. And you walked in and you took your last look at Mikey and you put your hand on the casket and you turned around and I was right, we were just looking at each other and when I saw your face, the look in your face, I felt super worried because I could tell that you were tore up. And I said to myself, hey man, Jocko, you need to get your fucking game together right now and be strong.
And you were. And that's what we needed. And guys like the Delta Platoon Commander, super, super strong for us. But you saw them hurt. I mean, everybody's hurting, It was, that deployment, you can't not be close with somebody, And especially someone like Mikey, man. Like, he knows I like my sleep. And so he would make sure I didn't get my sleep just because Mikey didn't sleep. And our rooms were right next to each other. I was back in this corner. He was over in this other corner. And there was a sheet of plywood between the two of us. And he was always like, what's up, Holmes? He's like, hey, Holmes, you sleeping? I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to, Holmes. And he's like, cool. And he'd open up the tarp, the little cami, tarp that I had over for my door. He'd just come in and sit on the edge of the bed. I'm like, what's up, buddy? He's like, nothing. Just he just talk about family stuff, and you could tell a lot was on his mind, and he's like, hey, you want to watch the newest episode of Thirsty Traveler? My parents sent me the Thirsty Traveler. I was like, no, but I'm awake, so I guess we're gonna watch the Thirsty Traveler because there's a couple times where I'd be like, hey, bro, like I'm trying to sleep, like just go do your own thing, you know what I mean? And he had a little hole that he carved into the plywood between our rooms. And he would crack chem lights and push them through. And they'd fall right next to where I was sleeping. And I'm like, I'm going to strangle this guy. But it was my boy Mikey, Like, he was my boy. We were real close in the workup. And then obviously deployment, we used to ride street bikes together. And anyway, so deployment, he was just fun. It was just, I say all that say that is just he did that with everybody.
Yeah.
It was hard not to be close to him. It was, there's a different connection when you're legitimately in war with your boys. That's why all the Army and Marine guys that we served with, like, anytime I still see some of them once in a while. I randomly ran into one of them up in Ohio, and I was just like, dude. And I was up there on a sales trip, and I just ditched my sales team guys, because I wanted to hang out with them, and then there's been other trips where same thing, another one. My boy Nick Hobbs, I ran into him. I was with my sales team, and it's like, come on, it's just that connection is just, it's hard to explain. I mean, you guys know how it is doing jiu-jitsu and combat sports where you're rolling with guys and you legitimately, you're helping guys cut weight and just all this stuff. Like, there's that bond and that connection. Take that, times it by 1,000. And then add some more, and that's the connection you get with these boys in combat. So it was just real hard. I mean, and part of it is that's just who I am. Like, I wear my heart on my sleeve. I just connect and attach to people very closely. And Mikey is just it was really hard.
And that's the look that I saw on your face.
Yeah.
That's the look that I saw on your face. I was like, and I know, I mean, obviously I know what kind of personality you have. I knew what kind of personality you have, and I saw that look of devastation. And it was the first time, because we'd been together. I mean, we heard the news. But it was the first time that I saw your look, where it was almost like that was the first time that you really realized that Mikey was gone. That was it.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm right or wrong, but
No.
from the look in your face, I was like, okay, he is devastated right now, and that's what I thought to myself. And again, I mean, I saw you as my little brother. I mean, for sure, I don't mean that in any kind of derogatory way in any sense, but I literally saw you as like my blood little brother.
Yeah.
And so to see you just devastated like that, and I knew that you were looking at me like, okay, what's Jocko gonna do? And I knew that I knew what I had to do.
Yeah.
Was I had to show, like, listen, this is what we do.
Yeah.
This is who we are. Get your shit together, Jocko, and handle this. And not saying I didn't, not saying I was a robot,
Yeah.
but I knew that I had to maintain strength.
You have to.
And find that so that you guys could go, all right, we're going to be okay.
What's been pounded into our minds since Buds? Win the fight. Like, if you're in a fight, win the fight. Win the firefight, right? And right then, that our fight was, you had to keep the guys together. That's why it's always self-aid, buddy aid, right? You get shot, you get hurt, you take care of yourselves, because if you're in a firefight, your boys are going to win the firefight first before they can take care of you. That's just part of it. That's how we operate. And you had to do that.
Yeah, no doubt.
I mean, that you're in that highest leadership position, like, yeah, it just... And the same thing, like, I had to get myself together, just because other guys in the platoon, like, I thought, or at least I felt like they looked up to me as well. And, especially after that deployment, you had to keep your stuff together, and it's just a weird, I don't know, it was the first time I ever experienced that, at that level. So, yeah.
And then, obviously, Mikey's funeral, which you were at, I obviously wasn't there because, like you said, we were still, most of us were still in Iraq, and had to finish out the deployment and do the turnover with the guys that were coming in from Team 5, and that was another thing, was just, I mean, I talk about it all the time, like, and even when we were talking prior to recording today, I was like, hey, this is kind of blurry to me, like.
Yeah.
I was asking you who went home with you. I mean, I was like, okay, these guys are gone. Okay, here's what I got to do. I got to focus on the next thing. I couldn't get dragged down or think about that anymore because I had to, like you said, I had to do my work. I had to do my job. Yeah. And, I think that's the good thing is for guys that were able to go to the funeral and everything. It's like you get to get that like bit of closure. Yeah. Well, a lot of, the guys that were still over there, we didn't get that, until we got home. Yeah, we got home, and get to go see Mikey's grave and meet with his family and get to know his family and get to be together again as a troop. And so all those things are kind of how you go from that anguish, or I should say for me, the buried anguish of that you have to bury on deployment. When you get home, you go, okay, now we can get this stuff out and discuss it. And at least, maybe not discuss it. I don't need to say anything to you, JP. I don't need to talk to you about it. I know, but we can settle it, Yeah. And I think when guys don't do that, when guys don't think about it, when they keep it buried all the time, that's when it can be really problematic. You gotta face the fact, and you gotta be okay with it eventually. That, hey, this is what happened. Yeah. And, when we talk about, like, who's, I guess you could say, who's to blame, and I told this to multiple people. Matter of fact, I told everybody, you want to blame somebody? You blame the fucking Moosh. Yeah. They're the ones that did this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what happened. Yeah. And what we're going to do is
kill more of them.
Continue to go kill more of them.
Yeah.
So that deployment obviously was a game changer for us. Yeah. For a huge impact on our lives, and everything really that we're doing to this day. And you got home. I moved over to take over the training command there.
Yep.
You started another workup, but you got hurt.
Yeah, so
Hurt your shoulder.
I was just the desert. I was smoked. Just coming home from that deployment. Initially just still kind of messed up. Well, not still kind of. I was messed up with the whole Mikey thing. And I remember I went and told Yarborough, I was like, hey, I just want to go Paycom. Like, just let me reset. He's like, okay. And then he knows, and he knows me. He's like, all right, cool, yeah, roger that, knowing that's not what he's going to do. And I'm driving back up to Sacramento on leave. He's like, hey, I know you said you want to go to Paycom, but, yeah, we need to get after it again. So you're going to go to Iraq again or possibly Afghanistan. I was like, yeah, roger that. Yeah, I don't even know why I said that. It was one of those things where you're just like, I'm going to go do Paycom, go to Thailand.
Were you going to stay
whatever.
in Delta Platoon?
No, they switched it all up. So
I remember that, but there were a couple guys that stayed there.
Yeah. So, no, I was going to be Alpha or Bravo platoon.
After our deployment with TU Bruiser, they took it, instead of keeping it together, because there was all this experience in these two platoons, instead of keeping it together, they just split everybody apart into different platoons. So other platoons would have these guys in their platoons with a ton of combat experience.
Guys were pissed.
Yeah, everyone was pissed.
Like super pissed. But so we start workup and ripped my shoulder out of joint, my right one. And it was a bad one. Not like I'd done that multiple times before. Like, we're out at Nyland, doing our desert warfare, getting it on, and my shoulder came out, and I just relocate the shoulder and, suck it up a little bit and keep going. And this was a bad one. So ended up having to have surgery. Like, all right, cool. You have surgery, you'll miss a little bit of workup, but we'll catch it up and we'll get going. And when I had surgery, they punctured my brachial nerve or did some damage to it, so I would actually drop stuff. And you can't be in an active duty platoon when you're dropping stuff, randomly, because I was at rehab and I couldn't grab onto stuff, or I would just drop stuff. So then they pulled me, and I went to Buds for a little bit as an in-doc instructor, and a good time over there. Learned a lot about just professionalism, and things change and evolve, and so went over to Trade It with you guys, and you and Z. You guys pulled me over there, and it was awesome. Stepped into assaults, and where we're doing all the CQC and urban warfare training, and Trade It was awesome. I'm working for you again, which is, I'm like, yes, get after it.
As it should be.
Yes, absolutely. And I learned a lot at Trade It about good leadership and bad leadership. There's some guys that Trade It that hadn't really done anything, and Jocko was pushing those guys out of there. Not in a bad way, but just like, hey, man, like, you're not going to be, the war's really been going on for a while. Training's, combat is getting intense. Training needs to be intense, and it needs to come from guys that actually have experience or are willing to listen to the guys that have the experience and apply that, And so it really shaped and changed the platform of training for all the West Coast SEAL teams. And so I was super proud to be a part of that. And I learned a lot about leadership and growth. I learned good bosses and bad bosses, and actually ended up becoming the LPO for Mount. Well, I guess it's now called SOUT. So I ran all the urban warfare training for a year, and that was awesome. I got to learn how to work with guys and actually manage guys, effectively. Which it's funny, you get on the outside and you're like, man, what you do on the outside is no big deal, compared to the teams where you're like in charge of like 100+ role players and 17 instructors and logistics for travel and hotel and making sure all the training is set up and managing the guys that need to be talking with the other units that we're talking to. And at this time, I'm still only 24, maybe 25. I don't even think I was 25. Oh, no, I was 25, and maybe. And so I just learning a lot about that. And that was pretty cool. And then spent a lot of time at CQC, which every good team guy loves.
Of course.
Urban warfare, land warfare, and CQC, know. And, had some really good bosses over there as well. My boy, Chucky, he's still in, so I'll respect his name as well. We actually lived together, and I worked for him. And that was a huge lesson of, which we all have in the teams, is balancing personal and professional. Because the teams are very tight. You could go out and drinking with your bosses, hang out with them, and then at work the next day. But different when you're living with somebody. And, man, I was late for work one day. We're on the road. And I was like, hey, man, I'm running a little late. He's like, you better not be late, something along those lines. So I get there, and I'm like a minute late, right? Dude, I ended up on, like, restriction. Not, like, really full-on restriction, like military thinks about it, but it was like, he was like, yeah, you got to do this. So basically, I was just a little go-to guy where I got to do all the work, and it was good, though, I expected that of him. Like, I knew, like, I made a mistake. I got to pay the man. And he, I put him in a hard position, which was unfair to him. And, you can't be doing that to your boys, like, you can't take advantage of, like, oh, my buddy's my boss, so I can do this. No, my buddy's my boss, so I'm going to work even harder for him. And, and that's what, I was, again, a little upset with myself. And, there's a couple of times, like, he'd have to sit me down and we'd just talk. He's like, hey, man, you can't be doing this stuff, or you need to be focused on this. And he really helped with my professional development, really helped and helped me learn a lot of stuff that I was able to apply to the outside and be successful. And, he's still a great friend of mine. He's got a beautiful family, and it's awesome seeing him grow over the years.
Yeah, he's still kicking ass in the teams.
Dude, he's a legit boss. Like, the type of guy you're like, I really want to work for him, And so I just took a lot of the stuff that I learned from him, and I've applied it to the outside, and it's been awesome.
And you ended up on the outside because you made the decision to get out.
Yep.
And
I'm a quitter.
Yeah, the joke is in the SEAL teams, if, no matter what you've done or how long you've been in for, if you ever get out of the SEAL teams, you're a quitter. So that's what they tell you. So you decided to get out. Pretty much based on your family, right?
Yeah, I got out. I'd already had a failed marriage. I have a son that's here in California that I don't ever get to see because his mom is awesome. And, I met Amanda, and she's the love of my life. She's amazing. She deals with me and deals with me very well.
I give her big props for that.
Absolutely.
Nice work, Amanda.
Yeah, she's, you watch the movie 300, the Queen.
Yeah.
That's her.
Right on.
100%, And, she was going to move to San Diego with Aiden. And I was super fired up about that. And then she was pregnant. I'm like, okay, cool. Still happening. And then pregnant with twins. She's like, nope. I'm not leaving mama in my support group. I remember I was so mad. And it caused a lot of issues because I held on to that anger longer than I should have, and I was just so angry and upset. But now that I look at it, she's a small town Mississippi girl.
Yeah.
She's gorgeous, she's awesome, but she's a small town girl. And, sometimes we're back home, she'll be driving, she's like, hey, you can drive, because she doesn't want to drive in the traffic on, the main roads. And I think about that, I'm like, that's like no traffic here in San Diego. So it wouldn't have been fair. And then all of a sudden it's like for me to expect her to move to San Diego with Aiden, and I'm taking him away from his dad. So that wasn't really fair, and I could relate to that. And, her parents are awesome. So then all of a sudden, her friends, she has a good support group. And it's like, I was just like, man. And a couple things didn't work out when I had screened. I had another surgery when I was out. I just took it as, hey, this is maybe the time I need to move on. It's a good chapter in my life, an amazing chapter that I'll never forget. And it's very important. It's who helped mold me as a man. But I absolutely was not going to be there for Amanda and the kids, And so I got out, and there's a lot of guys that are upset about that in the teams, and
talking about me?
Yeah, you and a couple other guys. A couple other guys that are still active, But so I got out, and it was a rough transition. You go from, I'm born and raised in Sacramento, California, and lived in San Diego my whole life. Lived in San Diego the whole time in the Navy. And then I'm in North Mississippi. Yeah. Awesome. Man, you talk about culture shock. It's cool to go visit. You know, I used to always love when we go out there for work, but you're leaving after 2 weeks. And now all of a sudden I'm living there. And it was just nothing bad with the South or where I live. It just, for me, it was a huge change. And I go from being a SEAL to now I'm doing sales at a financial job, a financial company, which of course I get after it because that's just, you know, I have to provide for your family, but just the transition. And I made the mistake of not reaching out to people and asking and helping, you know what I mean? Like, one of my boys who's still in, Los, you know, go by his little nickname. And I did reach out to him a couple times and he was real solid. He would reach out to me. He'd be like, hey man, how you doing? How is JP really doing, you know? And I'd talk to him about stuff. He's like, man, that's not good, bro. Like, we need to, you know, whatever. And there's times where he's like, all right, well, you know, you just know what you need to do. And, you know, Chucky, same thing. Chucky would reach out to me as well. And he'd come out there for training and he'd come over and hang out with the family and the kids. Right, you know, he's my boy, you know? And so I found a gym and a new MMA gym was opening up like right around the corner from the house. And I was like, oh,
boom.
Yes. You know what I mean? And came really close with a couple of guys, Jake and Zach Underwood. They're actually from Union City, same city Aaron Vaughn was born and raised in.
Oh, right on.
So they already knew about him. And I didn't tell them what I did. You know, they had no idea what I did. And I was like, yeah. They're like, Union City. I was like, oh, cool, I know Aaron Vaughn. And they're like, how do you know Aaron Vaughn? I'm like, oh, we used to work together. Like, well, what do you mean you used to work with them? You know, and I told them, like, what? Oh, cool. And, you know, a couple other fighters from the gym, Joe Pass, Andy and Teddy, like just my boys, you know, like out there. They became they became my team guy buddies out there. Like they're cut from the same cloth as us, you know, and just down to earth guys that legitimately always, they have my back out there. And it was weird because I never really explained much to them about my time in the teams, but they knew I was having a hard time transitioning. And they were just there for me. You know, they're just there at the gym. They'd push me to my limits. You know, they're like, hey, you're going to start fighting. I'm like, awesome. You know, and so, you know, I have 7 amateur MMA fights and just a challenge of cutting weight and just training with the boys and sparring. And, you know, I do it as a stress reliever, which is funny, you know, because like you watch some of my YouTube videos and the announcers is like, yeah, and Jeremiah Patrick says he trains as a stress reliever. That's unique. Like they don't know how to like, you know, they don't know how to react to it because everyone else is like, I want to be the next UFC champion and I had a horrible life and I hate my parents and I'm just, you know, I'm like, yeah, I have an awesome life. I make really good money and I just want to have a little stress reliever. You know, it's funny. You know, like,
nice.
You know, I wasn't fighting to turn pro because I need to make money. I was just like, there's my stress reliever. And it was being around guys that were like-minded again.
It's fighting.
Yes.
Fighting is fun. And sometimes if you can't get a machine gun to fight with, it's fun to fight with your fists.
Yeah.
And it's fun. I mean, it's part of your instinct as a human.
Yeah. Oh, it should be.
Well, yeah, if it's not. Yeah, I mean, I guess for some people it's not, but for the people that I know, it's part of their instinct as a human.
Yeah. You should be able to defend yourself.
You want to be able to fight, you know?
You should.
I mean, you watch little kids, little 6-year-old, 7-year-old kids.
After it.
You bring any random 6-year-old or 7-year-old boy into a jiu-jitsu place and put them on a room with padded walls and padded floor, and you say do whatever you want, they're going to end up attacking each other. That's the way it works.
That was my daughter's, like, I got them in jiu-jitsu 2 weeks before they turned 3.
Nice.
It was mostly the owners of the gym. And Joel, he's a former Team 1 guy. He's a part owner of the gym. He's a 5-time world champion. In, I believe it's gi, 4-time world champion, no gi.
Nice.
I don't think he's had 1 point scored on him in the last 5 years.
Damn, dude.
Yeah,
that's
solid.
Savage.
Just bringing the team guy reputation into jiu-jitsu world, you know.
That's
people
sick.
Are just terrible.
Who is it?
Joel Gendry.
I don't know.
Team 1. Dude, he's so solid.
How old is he?
He's 50-something.
How the hell do I not know him? He must have been the teams are the same. I mean, I was at Team 1 for like 8 years.
Maybe it's when you went to the East Coast.
Huh.
I don't know. Anyway, super solid guy.
I remember you when you started fighting.
Yeah.
And you were like, I'm gonna fight. You know, because you send me texts too.
Yeah.
And you sent me a text like, hey, I'm starting to train. And then like a month later, you're like, dude, I'm getting into it. And then a month later, you're like, bro, I can't believe I didn't train with you all the time. Because you and I used to train occasionally. But like, I'll train with anybody anytime. and you would train with me like once a month when you could have been training with me 7 days a week.
I
And
was furious.
Yeah,
I
was laughing inside, and I was also pissed, and I was like,
I tell people that.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. So I basically could have been doing jiu-jitsu since 2005
Yeah.
with Jocko.
yeah,
And people are like, what? I'm like, yeah, I could have, but I guess I never really got the taste. I like to stand. I don't know. I'm an idiot. That's why I did it.
Yeah.
I'm just an idiot.
You know, actually,
and then
you called yourself an idiot when you were talking about your youth before, and I realized that when I bring team guys on here, when they talk about like their past, the term idiot comes up all the time. I know I do. I'm like, I was an idiot.
Yeah.
And Tony's like, I was an idiot. It's just like classic,
Well, I mean, like, and then when I tell people like, yeah, since 2005 with Jocko, I could have been rolling and training all the time. And then when you opened your gym, guys like Echo and his brother and Dean Lister and you.
But...
No, I was there, but I was always doing the stand-up stuff.
Oh.
And I was doing jiu-jitsu just to do jiu-jitsu. I didn't do any of the MMA stuff, Now I look back and I just legitimately get upset about it sometimes. And I'll tell people like, yeah, I could have done. And they're like, you're an idiot. You know what I mean? I'm like, they're like Jocko, Dean Lister, and like it's just whatever. I mean, hey, everything happens for a reason. I mean, I've done pretty well so far. I'm 6-1, and the guys out there are solid. Solid
you
coaches.
Felt good last night.
Yeah,
because we trained last night.
And I hadn't done anything in like 16 months.
Yeah.
I had that injury. And I went into my last fight. My coaches were like, dude, I'm pulling you. And Joel, dude, he's such a legit badass, just tough. Like, people are terrified of him. But he has the other side that people don't realize team guys have, where he's like, hey, I'm pulling you from this fight. Like, I can't let you get hurt. Like the nurturing, like, you got to take care of your boys. Because I went into it with a facial fracture from here down to here. All these teeth are still numb from it. I had a deviated septum, crushed sinuses, and a herniated disc in my neck.
What'd you do? Get in a fight with a bear?
Yeah, sparring Teddy Holder, who knocked out Thiago Silva. Dang. Yeah, that's one of my boys. And Andy Uruk, Bellator fighter. Zach, all these guys. Just they get after it, And I
hope they get after it a little bit less in your sparring sessions from now on.
Yeah, we learned that. Well, and also it was pretty.
That's old school, man. I'm telling you right now. That is old school. You don't need to spar like that.
No, we know that.
Spar like that.
And the guys have changed it up. Guys have legitimately changed it up because guys were getting knocked out in fights. And anyway, we can talk. That could be a whole nother podcast. But they really changed it up. And so, but I, when I got the call for that fight, I'd fought not too close before that with this guy, a tough guy. Ours was like a grudge match. Everyone thought we hated each other, and we sold so many tickets, it was insane. Like, we each sold over 110 tickets.
So you're like the Conor McGregor of amateur fighting.
It's Conor McGregor amateur fighting in the Mid-South. The Mid-South thinks it's like the next big thing, and it's like, and so. So anyways, me and that guy, Danny Shell, good guy. He's awesome, dude. He really is a really good guy, you know what I mean? Right, but we'd get after it on social media just to, just because we're bored, I guess. And but it came down, we had a tough fight, you know what I mean? And it was awesome. Like, you watch it, and we're just.
What weight do you fight at?
I fought anywhere between 170 to 205. My first fight.
What are you walking around at right now?
215.
Nice.
Not nice. Not a good 215.
I try to be gentle over here.
No, that's fine. You don't have to. But my first
bastard.
Yeah, exactly. Hey.
You used to walk around like in TD Bruiser. You were like 185.
No, that was my heaviest. Like, I couldn't break 185. Like, I was trying to do all the bodybuilding lifts, get as big as I could. And I could never break 185. And then my dad's like, dude, wait until you get your 30s. I'm like, whatever. He's like, oh, okay, because your body has legitimately done everything mine has at every age increment. And then, you get big. But my first fight, I fought at 205, but I only weighed 190 because I was going to fight at 185 for my first fight. Mm-hmm. But that's why I normally don't go by Jeremiah Dinnell on social media, because guys started Googling Jeremiah Dinnell. I testified against Jesse Ventura with the whole Chris Kyle thing and whatnot. So you Google Jeremiah Dinnell, there's a bunch of Navy SEAL stuff out there. And so that's why I changed my Facebook page to Jeremiah Patrick, just because, fighters would look that up. I had my coaches were like, they didn't want to tell me. And I knew there was something weird with Jake and Zach and my dad. Like, I knew there was something going on. my fighter backed out.
Oh.
And then they were trying to find like another fighter, and then he backed out. I think it was like 2 or 3 guys. I had sold on my first fight over 100 tickets also. Like I had people flying in from California, driving out, drive East Coast, West Coast, Washington. You know, my aunt and uncle were flying out. It's like first amateur fight. This is ridiculous, right? Should have just traveled somewhere where
This better be a good show.
Exactly.
I flew out from Washington, son.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and I remember telling my buddy Jake, I'm like, dude, I don't care if it's a heavyweight. Get me a fight. Like, I can't not fight. You know what I mean? Like, all right, well, fine. So I found some good. He had a good amount of fights already, and like he cut down to 205, and I weighed in with flip flops, my cutoff cami shorts, all my stuff in my pockets at 191, and it was awesome. It was good. Good little first fight. Got myself way too amped up for it. You know, I should have gone in.
That one's on video, right? Yeah, I think you sent it to me.
Yeah, I sent you everyone. Yeah.
I was looking at him. I was
round.
looking at that fight, and I'm like, yes, this is the JP that's extremely amped right now.
Yeah. I finished him in the second round. TKO in the second fight. Finished that guy in the first round. Third fight, which was hilarious. They had me as the main event on this card for the third fight.
That's what you get when you're selling 100 tickets.
I know.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, we're putting you in the main event.
Yeah, that's not good for adding just unneeded stress.
Well, you know what? No kidding. Like, in watching your fights and everything, you do have you have this anyways, but you have like a level of charisma that makes people want to watch you fight because you're just fired up and you have a good level of charisma. It's like you're like, I compared you to Conor McGregor jokingly, but it's a reality. If you watch some of your fights, it's like, I could see in the Mid-South people going, I want to go watch Jeremiah Dinnell get after it.
Punch him in the face. Like, dude, for sure. You should come watch some fights in the South. It's hilarious.
Sell me some tickets, man.
I think I can get you a ticket, bro. But so the fights have been awesome. My fourth fight, I lost. I actually went into that fight. I was in the hospital, or not the doctors, in and out of the doctors, almost hospital like the week prior. I was cutting down to 170 again also, with hand, foot, mouth disease. And
is that your method of cutting weight? Get yourself hand, foot, mouth disease?
Dude, I would not recommend it at all. I had to take this medicine to numb my mouth and throat just to drink water. So it did help with cutting weight, except for it was horrible. Amanda was legitimately taking care of me, like everything. And she helps. She preps all my meals. You know, I come home from the gym, and she.
But you've been out. You think you're gonna fight again?
Yes.
Check. Check.
Gotta heal up, but it's been good. You know,
you also had a rough patch with Amanda, right?
Yeah, we did. I get a little emotional and think about that sometimes. It's just, we're so lucky what we have. We got a second chance. We actually full on had a divorce, moved out, had my own house. She was doing her own thing. I was doing my own thing. And, it just came down to lack of communication, which when I really look at it and we both look at it, and we were both just being selfish, which, like, I try to think that's not me. And with Amanda, like, that's not her. You talk about somebody who's not selfish, that's her, like, to an extent, but we just, I don't know. Yeah,
well, it's bizarre, too, and because you are, in the teams, you were obviously extremely selfless, but I see how these things happen for whatever reason. With your team guy bros, it's like, I'll do anything for you. Yeah. And I've had situations with you where I've been like, hey, I need this right now, and you've been like, I'll be there in 3 minutes and 30 seconds, and I'm like, okay, cool, but for some reason, guys and girls both don't always do the best job of translating that selflessness into that relationship at home. So it happens, but I'm glad that you guys were able to kind of work through that, man. That's awesome.
Like I said, it was about a year. We're doing our own thing, and we just kept getting drawn back to each other, and it was the kids, and everyone says, "Oh, my kids are so smart." Dude, our daughters and Aiden are incredibly intelligent. Like, my daughters will be 5 in January. So this time frame, they're 3, and they know what's going on, and they're trying to be like, hey, my daughter Noel's like, well, Daddy, if you and Mommy didn't argue so much, maybe we could all live together. And to hear that from your kids, I was just like, whew. It was rough. It was really hard. And you do anything for your kids,
So what do you think is the key element that made you go, you know what, jackass, idiot, you need to get in the game here and make this work? Like what, and then what method did you use where you said, okay, next time that she does this, I'm going to counter, instead of attacking or instead of getting defensive, I'm just going to be like, all right.
Yeah. So what made me get back in the game is I still loved her. Like I'm still, head over heels in love with her. And head over and heel in love with my kids. And I didn't want somebody else raising my kids. And Aiden, like I would still pick him up and take him to school, even though, And
okay, so there's a pretty clear answer. Then what did you have to change to make it work when you went back, when you said, hey, all right, I'm going to, this in your own mind, what did you do differently that's made it successful?
We put each other first.
Boom.
And we learned to communicate, and I was sitting in Amanda, I don't know. We both just had like this come to Jesus with somebody. Like I can't remember who I was talking to. I don't know who she was talking to. And, she's crafty. She's smart. She knows how to deal with me. Right. So she calls and she knows it's my weekend. Obviously she's calling me to talk to the kids. And she's like, hey, can I talk to the girls? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So I put on speakerphone. She's like, hey girls, I love you. Hey girls, do you want Daddy to pick me up for a church so we can all go together? Dude, I was so pissed. And the chorus, the girl's like, yeah. And I was like, cool. Hey, outside in 5 minutes or I'm driving. Still going to keep driving, She's waiting outside in this dress. Looks stunning. I was like, all right. That was at the beginning, and then we just learned to communicate with each other and we put each other first. And,
little cover and move.
Exactly.
Maybe a lot of cover and move.
There's a lot of cover and move. And we legitimately have to put each other first instead of, just doing it as a team. Like my focus, and I don't do this all the time. I'm not trying to act like we have this perfect relationship and everything's phenomenal now, but we legitimately try to put each other first in almost everything that we do to try to take care of each other. And out of all the arguments that we've ever had or anybody else has ever had with their significant other, it was because it was too complicated. Something was complicated and messed up. And so we just had to simplify things.
Let's just go ahead to, law of combat number 2.
Exactly.
We got 1 covered.
Yeah.
It's cover and move. Keep things simple.
Cover, move. Keep things simple.
Yeah, and I know what you're talking about. You know what that is? That's when you take a look at this argument that you're in and you go, wait a second. What are we arguing about right now? Oh, we're arguing because I put my spaghetti in the microwave before you did. You know what? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'll let you have the spaghetti first. Let's simplify. Because that little thing of who's using the microwave first all of a sudden spirals into, a major blowout if you're not careful.
And it's over something stupid.
That's what I'm saying.
But, she's an alpha female. I'm an alpha male. So, of course, we're just like, at times we just want to challenge each other. But then we're like, no, this is stupid.
Yeah.
Hey,
I got an idea. Instead of challenging each other, why don't we work together and take over the world?
I know. That's our plan right now, and we're doing it.
Good.
And then, and then just legitimately figuring out what was priorities in our life. Like, we just had to be, so we could be on the same page.
Echo?
Prioritize, execute.
Exactly.
Boom.
Booyah.
Look at that.
And I've talked to a couple of different people about this,
You know what? It's awesome that you're saying this because I've heard a bunch of times from people that've been like, "Oh, extreme ownership saved our marriage," but I've always said, "Cool, thanks," but I've never said like, "Explain that to me."
Yeah.
But now you're explaining it to me, and it absolutely does. Yeah. I always thought they focused on the ownership part, meaning, "Oh, don't worry, hey, I'm going to take ownership of this. I made a mistake. Here's what I'm going to do to fix it. I'm sorry. It's my fault."
Yeah.
I always thought that that's just what they were talking about, but you're going ahead and applying other laws of combat to your marriage and making things happen. That's pretty legit.
Yeah. And Amanda's the one that, just recognized a lot of these shortfalls that we're having and would just communicate it with me. And she'd be like, hey, if you're upset with me over something, I probably didn't mean to do that on purpose. So just let me know.
That's a good point.
And so,
that's a simple
Yeah, I know. And so as far as us prioritizing things, like we just, and we need to get like an actual full on detailed game plan for what we're doing. But we realized what was important and what wasn't important. And some of these certain things, like the things that truly weren't important, like I don't think twice about it. And she doesn't either. And we just focused on our goals for her business, my business, raising our kids the right way, trying to be involved in the church as much as possible, trying to give back to others. Like those are our priorities, not the stupid, like, well, you said you're coming home at 10, but you stayed out drinking wine with your girlfriend until 11. Who cares? She came home to me. She was relaxing with her girlfriends since I've been gone for 3 weeks for work. Like she should have stayed out all night and just relaxed. You know what I mean? Like, hey, have a sleepover at your friend's house so you don't have to wake up to the kids 3 times during the night. That's what I should have done, you know? And she's done the same with me, like there's a couple of times where I'm just like super stressed out or whatever. And she's like, hey, what do we need to do? Like, what do you need? She's like, you know what? You need to go work out. I'm like, yeah, but we need to go do this right now. And she's like, no, what we need to do is you need to go work out and I can handle this.
That's awesome.
And it's just been awesome, night and day. Like I think about it like, dude, she's such a hard worker, and she runs everything. And then she'll make sure I have a cup of coffee like on the nightstand, like next to me in the morning. So when I wake up, and it's just like, you woke up early to go do that. So now like I'll try to like do stuff for her or whatever. And dude, it's just it's awesome.
One-upsmanship.
Yeah.
Of kind acts.
Right.
I don't know.
I hope my wife doesn't start that game with me. I'll lose.
It's hard though with her because she's so thoughtful and crafty. Like all of a sudden, like I don't know. It's awesome. So life has been good. It's really turned around. I mean, there's a real dark time. I'm not gonna lie. Like the divorce was rough, and there was some other times before that was real rough. I was drinking a lot, taking painkillers just because I had injuries.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, well, I have an injury, so I can take this painkiller. Oh, well, I can take 2 to 3 and drink at the same time. I was just trying to numb a lot of stuff that was going on, which is not the path to go.
It's not the path
at all. And we know that. And one of the things there's so many things I'm appreciative that Amanda helped me through, but I remember when I went to the VA because I was having a real hard time sleeping and just my body was all out of whack. Turns out I had my body wasn't producing testosterone anymore. I didn't know that, right? Well, so I didn't know that, but so I go to the VA. I come home with a bag of no kidding, 8 different meds that they wanted me to start taking. And I was like, okay. So I take it. First day, I'm like, oh my God. She had to get me out of bed for me to go to work because I was like a zombie. And and then the second day, and then that stuff started to become really addicting. I wanted that numb feeling. And she was just like, you're not the same person. Quick. She recognized it. And we got off. I was able to, and I wasn't even on that stuff for a full week. And it was so hard for me not to take it. Damn. She had to straight up help me detox. No, I'm not saying detox in a bad way, somebody who's but it was bad, and she identified that right away.
That's the thing.
And it was just oh, I know. And it was just nope, we're flushing this, this is gone, we'll figure something else out. And she's always been the one to, figure something else out and make sure we, work as a team on it. So it's been awesome, man. She's amazing.
That is awesome. And where does all this leave you right now? What do you got going on right now?
So, started my own company called Never Settle Consulting. I did sales at a financial company for a while. A lot of good relationships. My sales team was awesome. But I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted a little more fulfillment. It was taking time away from me being able to do what I wanted to do to be able to grow and, and spend more time with my family. Because I had a second chance. I had a second chance with Amanda and with my kids, and I wanted to do something that fulfilled me that would help us grow. So I started Never Settle Consulting, teaching tactics, combatives, and shooting to law enforcement, trying to work out some stuff with some smaller military units and groups, and for private civilian groups as well, and able to incorporate leadership and sales team building events into that. Just doing what I love, what I'm decently good at, as well. And so I've had a couple of buddies who said, hey, I need a second instructor for this. So I helped teach a long range shooting course for NRA Outdoors, and then taught a carbine course for them as well. So it's been good. It has ups and downs. I've worked with a couple clients that I thought was going to be a long-term thing and it didn't, but hey, it's business. You're out on your own. You learn your lessons and you just keep moving forward. And, a lot of people are like, well, why never settle? Like, they're like, I get it. It's awesome. And I was like, well, I just miss being in the SEAL teams. I miss being around guys that, for the most part, legitimately did not settle with average or, a mediocre lifestyle. Like, it just didn't happen. You're always constantly driving and pushing each other to be better, to be stronger, to be faster, to be smarter. I remember multiple times, like, you would come in and be like, hey, have you ever heard of this website? I'm like, no. You're like, you need to start reading it every morning. I'm like, okay. So I go in and I'd print off the articles and I'd read them and highlight them. And Jocko later on, he's like, hey, did you hear about this? I'm like, yeah, actually, blah, 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 blah.
Boom.
Yeah. And so, I just miss being around that, and that's not for the most part, you don't find that in civilian life outside, in business. You don't. And I really wanted to be able to have an impact. Like, I want to work with veterans that have issues, that are going through problems. I want to give back to law enforcement, because they have a hard job, man. And they're underfunded, they're undertrained. And I wanted to give back, and I enjoy that. I like doing that stuff. And it gives me freedom to be able to choose, to help out with different projects and help people. And, Amanda's been super supportive. And, the other logo of Never Settle is win the fight. No matter what, you just win the fight. And it's not a physical thing. Life is a fight. We all go through our fights. We just have to establish what we want. Like you talk about, the commander's intent. Like, if you don't have your own commander's intent for you and your family, you're screwed. You're going to wander around and you're just going to waste your life away. And so I just, and then under it, it's in Latin, sign metu, which means without fear. Fear is the opposite of faith. Like you read about Mikey, fear is no match for my faith. And I believe that. And I want others to believe that. And I don't think a lot of people out there believe that. And if we can paint that message, and I would love, for my company to be more of like a lifestyle, And some dude went and got my logo tattooed on his calf because he's like, I want it to be a reminder. And he incorporated his kids' names into the tattoo. He's like, dude, it's a daily reminder for me not to settle for average and just get after it. And I'm like, all right, I'm doing something right, hopefully, And
Awesome.
so, and Amanda's super supportive of it, and she's just doing everything to help me out with it. And, she has her business and she still takes the time to help me grow mine. So it's awesome, man. Just helping people figure out what they want in life. Like, cause I don't think a lot of people take the time to establish that. And, I think if we can help that, and if we can help veterans, and if we can help the youth figure out what they want out of life and where they need to go, then I think, we can actually make an impact in this nation. And that's important right now.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And I guess that kind of brings us up to speed for this, or up to present day with where JP's at right now. Been a pretty good chunk of time. So that's probably about good for tonight. And obviously, thanks for coming on the podcast. I mean, one of the best things for me about this podcast is that there's heroes like you that people don't know about. And there's heroes from the past that people don't know about. And being able to bring heroes like yourself and heroes from the past to the present time and let people know and introduce that there's warriors in the past you need to know about, and there's warriors walking with us today that you need to know about. And that's one of my favorite things about the podcast, is having the opportunity to do that. And if you like listening to this podcast, well, guess what? I believe Echo Charles can tell you how to support the podcast.
I have a question.
Oh, man. Here we go. Hot seat.
Why are you going to flank me like that?
Yeah. I remember, actually, dude, the day I met you a long time ago, before I actually knew you real good.
Mm-hmm. You know me real good now? Is that the deal?
I think so.
Oh, dang.
Yeah. But like you always, and actually listening to you now, like I kind of realized, like, you live in the moment a lot. Yeah.
Yes.
Like, I remember we were sitting at when we had sushi that night.
Yeah.
The first night I met you. Like, when was that? Like, 2007 or something.
2007.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember you, and you had another guy with you. I forget.
Yeah, my buddy Kurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember we're all talking, but everyone's talking, and I hear you kind of on the side. You're like this is good, man. Eating sushi with good people. We're doing so. Kind of like you're totally. It's like you're explaining to him, but you're explaining to yourself. Like what am I experiencing right now?
Yeah.
And how good is this? How cool is this?
Yeah.
Almost like you had this stuff coming up, and you're living in that moment.
Yeah,
right there.
absolutely.
Just like with the stories with like you mentioned, like you saw the ambient light coming down. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Why is that, do you think? Or is there a specific reason, do you think? Because a lot of people not like that. You know how like they'll be like, "Oh, we're about to do this. I'm excited," or that thing happened and that's whack or whatever.
Yeah.
And they don't really, you know what I mean?
I've always been like that. My parents taught us just to enjoy what you have. It doesn't have to be material stuff. Just enjoy the life that you have. And I've also always realized that people have it a lot worse. And then after 2 deployments, because I met you after my second deployment, like I'd seen the worst. I'd seen evil firsthand. I'd seen actual oppression, not what some of these idiots are talking about right now. I'd seen, kids with underwear on and sandals in the streets, and that's all they had. I've seen, women holding their kids crying. I've seen guys use kids as human shields because they're cowards. And I'm getting to sit and enjoy sushi in San Diego, California with my best friend, Curtis, from high school, and a new group of guys that I met, through other team guys. And I'm like, man, life is good.
We were with the Cake Nuts, by the way.
Oh, Cake Nuts makes another appearance on the Jocko podcast.
Yeah. Solid dude. I think he tried to rip a tree out of the ground once, right?
Probably.
No, he did. Someone convinced him that he couldn't pull a tree out of the ground, so he tried.
Yeah, Jeremy probably tried to convince him that.
I think you're right on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fully. Also, second thing, what did they find out why you weren't producing testosterone?
Just the pituitary gland, the sac around my pituitary gland was damaged and destroyed pretty bad.
From the blast or something, or
from that blast and just multiple other like explosions and blasts overseas. I mean, we use breaching charges to open up doors. Where you're in a gunfight and the machine gun is legitimately going off right next to your head. That's providing like cushion. That there's times after gunfights, like I felt like I was just drunk.
Yeah,
I felt like I was drunk just because I was just out of it, and so just that much, and then just combat sports and other stuff like that, and so. When Amanda finally got me to go to the VA to get my levels tested, normal male, we're supposed to be between 600 to 900. I was 81. Yeah, it was bad. And they were just like, they called. I didn't answer my phone because I was at work and I was on the line or something like that. And they called Amanda, like, he needs to come back in right away. So of course they freak my wife out, right? She thinks I'm dying or something like that. Like, and then so I go and they get it retested again. It was 87. And they're like, "Are you on steroids right now?" And I'm like, "Look at me. Look like I'm on steroids." Now, granted, like when I was younger, I'd taken some real strong supplements from like Max Muscle and different places like that had them available, and I'm sure that might have had an effect. But I don't know.
No.
You know what I mean? I know. Well, like I try to like get, own up to some of the mistakes, because Jocko used to joke, he's like, JP just wants to be 205 pounds walking around.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Well, now I wish I could get down to 205. But, so yeah, my levels were real messed up. And they're like, how do you even get out of bed? How do you do this and this? I'm like, well, I have a family I have to provide for. I really don't have another option. So just got to get out there and get after it.
We call that BTF.
Just BTFing throughout the day.
Yeah, that's crazy. And that's another part. Remember how we talk about where that's the part that you don't really hear that much about. Just those little details. Like you say in a gunfight, if the machine gun is right here and it hits you. Yeah. Kind of like someone's hitting you physically,
It's a shock to your system.
Yeah. I mean, and I've been, I was actually going through some videos, and I'll try to get you guys some of these the other day, where I'm laying down on the sniper rifle and we're in a big firefight, and they come and straddle over me to start firing off rockets, and I'm getting that blast coming down, just crushing me. Damn. And then Mikey, right next to me with the AW gunner, he's like, ah, I'm just like, Oh my goodness, I'm gonna like need coloring crayons for Christmas next year or something. Like,
Yeah, man.
By the way, when you fire a rocket in training, you put on 2 levels of ear protection.
I had none.
Yeah,
You don't need ear pro in combat. Your ears naturally squeeze. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I remember one of my friends who went through sniper school too. He'd talk about the I think it was like the 50 cal.
Yeah.
50 cal.
Yeah.
He's like, bro, the thing is like just shooting it is like you're getting punched in the face.
Oh, it is.
Just shooting it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, considering we mount those to the tops of Hummers,
Yeah.
and if you don't have your foot on the brake and it's in park, it'll move the vehicle. And even that, and you see a vehicle going like just moving, like, and I was also a lead driver. So there's times where the machine, like 50 cal is right over us in the front, like the barrel's like sticking out and you're getting that blast and you're like, oh, I mean, it's just, but it's part of it. You know what I mean? Like I would not change any of that.
Yeah. It's
for
crazy
anything.
how like those details, like to someone who hasn't been, that's kind of a big deal. Because you watch movies and the guy's shooting and the guy's reaching across the guy, shooting the guy in the street corner and all this stuff. And then if you know those details, you're like, whoa, you skipped over this whole big kind of element of this situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just, so much respect, the guys that are still in the teams. I just did under 12 years in the Navy. I didn't do my full time. And you look at these guys that do 20, 22, 25 years. Like, I'm just like, dude, hats off to those guys, and like the guys that are still the same guys that I deployed with, it's weird me talking about it like I did anything special. Like, as a team, we did something special.
Yeah.
And those guys are still in the fight. They're still deploying. They're still doing workups. They're battling divorces. They're, dealing with new babies being born and, taking care of their wives and, family. And it's just like, just so much respect to those guys. And you look at all the other branches that we served with. And those guys just, dude, 18-month deployments.
18-month deployments.
Oh,
15-month deployments.
You get to go home for 2 weeks halfway through.
Yep.
Guys are going home to like their families moved out.
Yeah,
like
destroyed.
gone. Like have
Not
no
all
idea.
the time, but
I mean,
It happens.
you hear that. A couple guys came home. They came back and from on leave, and I was like, "Yeah, how was it?" He's like, "Well, my wife and kids are gone. I don't know where any of my stuff is." I'm like,
so jacked up.
"Do you want a hug? I don't know what to do."
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. JP and I were talking about that earlier. Like, we're visible. Well, I'm definitely visible, and I was telling JP like, you will now be visible, more visible. I mean, he's been maintained a pretty low profile and
Tried to.
Yeah, because of your fighting has a little bit of profile, but you're going to be more visible, and when you get visible, people automatically think that you're special in some way. And like I'm telling you, there's nothing special here. No. Definitely not from me, because like I did 20 years in the Navy, but okay, great. There's guys that do 30 years. There's guys that do 14 different deployments. There's guys that get wounded, and then you, like JP just said, you branch that out to all the services, and I'm another guy, and we're just other guys. We have a little bit of a higher profile, but that's not due to our anything special that we did, just the way things shook out in the end. So I always want to make that clear.
And like law enforcement, they're doing it every day. Like
every
my
day.
uncle that I was telling you about, like every day. Now we do a workup and then we just go get after it for 6 months and come home, do a workup, go get after it. But he's like legitimately getting after it every day for 15 plus years. And you're like,
it's a 23-year deployment.
Yeah.
To a combat zone.
Yeah. With limited resources, limited support, and
limited training,
and
a hostile environment on both the criminal side and actually oftentimes on the civil side of people that are lashing out at police officers from that whole other angle now. So
it's unfortunate.
You done with your questions, Mr. Charles?
For now, yeah.
Okay.
But I do have good news though.
You do.
My krill oil came in.
Oh, got that krill oil.
Right, that's good news.
That is good news. Right. We are happy about that.
You take krill oil?
I take shark cartilage.
Shark cartilage. Is that the same thing?
No.
No, that's like what? Glucosamine.
No, it's good for your joints. My dad got me on it, but I'll get on what you guys have. I'll give it a run.
Yeah, if you do or when you do, Onnit. It's the best one.
Okay. Well, then.
Is that the best one?
It's the best one.
It's straight up the best one. Everyone knows that, or most people know.
How do I get it? Where do I go?
You go to onnit.com.
Okay.
But if you're down to support the podcast,
Yeah.
which I know you are because you're here,
Yeah.
go onnit.com/Jocko and support your wallet, 10% off. Boom.
Dude, savings and the best.
Boom.
Get some.
Someone asked me, this was not yesterday, day before. Like, they're like, hey, I know, you guys are down with Onnit and all that stuff, but hey, is that the only supplements you take for real? I was like, yeah, that is. Krill oil, Alpha Brain sometimes, Shroom Tech.
Mm-hmm.
Warrior Bars too, but I don't know if that's a supplement. Anyway.
Dude, those are so good.
It definitely supplements your
need
food
for
intake.
Yeah, big time.
Tasty.
But yeah, you can support that way if you're in the mood to. Also, the Amazon. So I was trying to analyze the whole Amazon thing. Like, how does that kind of fit in the whole? I mean, we kind of know how, but okay. So you click through when you do your shopping at Amazon. You click through before you do your shopping. Click through the website, JockoPodcast.com or JockoStore.com. So, boom, you support that way. But so how does this fit in, right? So it's kind of like, okay, we're here putting out this message, right? And people who like click through or they buy shirts or something like that, they're kind of like the backup, kind of like the reinforcement,
They're actually the full-on supporting mechanism. Never mind the backup.
Yeah. So
Like,
okay. Yeah.
They're on the field.
Right.
They're on
Right.
the battlefield
So
with
backup
us.
that's a bad one. That's like they're like the reinforcement,
They're the full-on support
They're
mechanism.
the enforcement.
Yes, the
Straight up.
enforcement. Yes, very good. Very good.
I like that.
And yeah, man. So the Amazon click through, that's a good one. Good way to support this podcast, you boy. And of course, subscribe. Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I used it.
Yeah, you did use
I
it.
used
So
it.
I'm getting asked this a lot, right? And,
Yeah.
And I'm just going to lay it out there. So podcast Shiboha, where does that come from?
Yeah.
It's a really quick story. Here's where it comes from.
Mm-hmm.
There's a guy whose name is Henach Larange.
Renato Laranja. Just for clarity.
Okay, for clarity. But those of us that speak with a fake Portuguese accent from time to time would just say Henach.
Right. Yeah, that's the real.
So anyways, there's a video production company called FlixPoint Videos, which is Echo Charles's company, and they did a series that starred this Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu master, Renato Larange, and my son actually was very into the Henach program, and in being into the program, he started to adapt his own fake Brazilian Portuguese accent.
Yes.
And since he speaks no Portuguese whatsoever, he just simply does the pidgin of it. And he adds words or parts to words that he thinks in his mind sound like they might be Portuguese.
Sound correct. Yep.
So one day he said to me in a broken, imitated, fake Portuguese accent, he said, "Dad, are you going to record that podcast Shiboha?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And then that is where it came from. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't have any spelling. It's just my 13-year-old son with his comedic vibe going on.
Yeah. How he got that from, or what he got that from, is podcast. That's like podcast. That's podcast. And then poha and boa. There's two things.
Right.
Poha is like this expression. It's like it means something specific, but it's ultimately it's an expression.
But ultimately, let's be clear here. It's also a very bad word.
Yes.
It's like the worst swear word.
I don't think it's the worst.
It's a very bad swear
we'll just say
word.
it's bad, yeah.
In Portuguese.
Yeah, that's poha.
Poha.
Yeah, it's like slang. It's a mix. Yeah. So there's that. Then there's boa, which means good.
Boa means good.
The
Right?
exact opposite. So your son's thing. I don't know if it was poha or boa. I'm assuming poha because Renato says poha all the time.
Yeah.
So that's
but
what he
also says
did.
boa from time to time.
Yeah.
And my son, when he says it, is podcast Shiboha.
Boa. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
But that's where it came from.
Yep.
When we're going to listen to that podcast Shiboha right here.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to do.
That's crazy what our kids say.
Yes, indeed.
And still, when you think of it, that's still kind of an ambiguous explanation, really. So where does that leave us? You know, like, okay, so what does it mean?
It does, the thing is, it's meaningless. Although, I guess it does mean that we're talking about this particular podcast, your boy.
Yeah, and we're excited about it.
Yes, we are.
There it is. Boom. So, back to the support thing. You know, subscribe if you haven't already. That's a good way to stay in the game. You know, when the new one comes out, it just boom on your phone. Boom. Listen, ready.
I know I am.
You know, me too. And, you know, I'm on it. YouTube channel video coming out. I think I'm going to do a more of a comedy video. See how that goes over.
Well, it won't go over well with me, obviously.
Yeah.
Hey, we've got the heavy podcast and everybody loves it, and let's get after it and let's crush people and let's do the darkness. And you're going to do a comedy video? Is that where we're going with this?
Yeah.
All right,
just
man.
to see how it goes over.
We'll trust that judgment, I guess.
Yep. We'll let the troopers decide on that one.
Yeah.
Also, JockoStore. That's where, you know, we slang these shirts. But it's less about selling shirts. It's more about, hey, if you want to support the podcast, you want to wear a cool shirt with multiple layers, by the way. I talk about the layers, but let's just say, I don't want to go into a big thing about the layers.
Please don't.
But there's more to it than just the saying, you know, discipline equals freedom. What does that even mean? It sounds cool. What does that mean? Anyway, there's a meaning. Darkness, there's a meaning. And all the shirts have a cool
What's the meaning behind the t-shirt that says, the one that you're wearing that just says Jocko Podcast? That's just the meaning.
Well, if you look on the back, you can see the meaning.
Oh.
There you go. See?
What are you going to find about
that's the layers I'm talking about. Yep. Anyway, women's stuff coming out. Tank tops are already out, but the women's T-shirts are coming out as well. Just to kind of give all the girls or the women a small update. Some women were at the muster.
They certainly
asking about some stuff. I told them.
Enforce.
Yep. They were enforcing.
Enforce.
Got some new patches. The 3x2. So they can fit on the standard Velcro situation. And I think, there's like a tan color, right? It's like the official kind of color that sometimes you can't.
For the troopers that are going out into the desert.
I believe that's FDE, Federal Dark Earth.
Yeah.
Good, because I was trying to Google that and find out, and there's a bunch of them.
Yeah,
so FDE.
FDE. So
Okay.
I got the new SIG 320 in. So sick. And of course, I had to get one for Amanda. So we each have SIG 320 compact FDE.
FDE.
Nice.
Yeah.
Actually, that's coincidentally really helpful. I was looking for a long time for that.
Awesome.
My man.
Yeah.
Rash guards are good too. Look at them, multiple layers. Like I said, just trust me on that. And those are the ways to support if you're in the mood.
You can also support the podcast by buying some Jocko White tea.
Yes.
If you want to just improve every single aspect of your life. No, if you want to get some tea, you can get it. If you don't think you like tea, you probably will like this tea, because even though it's technically tea, it doesn't actually even taste like tea. It tastes like a nectar that you need to try. Yeah. I can't explain it. There's
I
just
agree
no
with
words.
that. I agree with that. I had it the last couple days.
Yeah.
At the muster, and man, that was awesome.
It's tasty. And plus, as we know from the Amazon reviews, it is added. There's a guy who deadlift went from 400 pounds to 8,000 pounds. Mm-hmm. So that's a 7,600 pound increase.
Legit
in
case
your
study
in
right
your
there.
in your deadlift.
Oh.
And so that's right there again. That's good to go. So get yourself some Amazon tea. Also, when you're on Amazon, you can get yourself a copy of a book called Extreme Ownership that I wrote with my brother Leif Babin. And the thing is, if you have a copy, that's cool. Get a couple more. You want to have them on standby, because sometimes you're just dealing with someone at work, and all of a sudden you realize that they're not taking ownership of something. It's no problem. You're not stressing out. Yep. You just reach in your desk, you grab a copy, you go, hey, why don't you take a quick look at this right here? Yep. Up the chain of command, down the chain of command. Now, when you do that, not only are you going to make their life better, because they're going to be able to figure some stuff out, you're also going to make your life easier, because now your surrounding personnel are in the game.
And you're taking extreme ownership in and of it to that action. Because remember, Kate,
man.
you know how like a lot of people, that's
that
the
is
question.
Deep. That is deep.
No,
right
because
there.
that's the question people out there be like, hey, what do I do when my colleague is not taking extreme ownership? You're like, whoa.
Ooh, yeah.
See, the mere nature of you saying, hey, you're not taking extreme ownership, that's you not taking extreme ownership.
So you own
So
that.
now you're owning it. You're saying, hey, I recognize this situation of you doing and not doing certain things. Let me take action. What can I do to take extreme ownership over this situation? Bro, it's true.
That is true.
Yeah,
that is
absolutely.
true. Also, as you are on Amazon, just nod your head a little bit and say thanks to Brady Lanter, Brady Trooper, who has been the backside support to the podcast Shiboha with all kinds of stuff.
Yep.
So shout out to Brady for getting after it. Technically, he's getting after it technically.
Technically, yeah. Technically and
You like
technically.
what I did? Now, you just talked about the muster, too. We just
Yep.
had the muster in San Diego, California. It was freaking awesome.
Yes.
It was really cool. We had a bunch of people there. The guy that helped run the event, named Matt,
Yep, man.
he's been running events for 20-something years. And he came up to me 2 hours into the event. This is after people were PTing at 4:45 in the morning. This is after everyone was in their seats at 0800, ready, standing by to get after it. No stragglers.
Yep.
Like when I say no stragglers, I mean no stragglers. Zero. 350 people, boom, in their seats, ready to rock and roll. He came up to me during the first little break, and he says, I've actually never seen anything like this, where an entire conference is so just on board in the game and getting after it. Because I've never seen this in any kind of conference.
Thanks.
So,
Major okay, I come down. The schedule says, hey, Echo, film some stuff, right?
Mhm.
That's
Film
kind
some
of the loose order.
Commanders in
I
10.
look at the schedule. Hey, optional 4:45 workout AM. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. I'm not used to the 4:45 AM. It's cool. Don't get it wrong, but I'm not used to 4:45 filming
working,
workouts, whatever.
being awake.
So I'm like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna show up on time. I'm gonna show up ahead of time. But really, though, optional. Really, first day. Let's face it. How many people are really gonna be at this thing?
Maybe 25,
I'm
30.
thinking
And people
10
are traveling.
to 20. You know what I mean?
And
Yeah.
we had guys from the UK. 5 different countries were represented. 42 different states. Like, it was insane.
Yeah,
So people are all over.
Yeah,
I'm
there's
like,
issues.
There's no way. I was like, I'm not a morning person like you. Like, I'm usually a guy that's up until 2 or 3 working on stuff.
Yeah.
So I was like, I gotta get up. I was like, dude, I'm here with Jocko and Leif and Echo. I've got to get after it. I was like, I'm gonna be pissed if there's like 5 people out there.
Yeah, I'm thinking 10, 20 would be solid. Boy, I pull around. I'm ahead of time, by the way. I'm pulling up at like 4:28, 4:29. I come around the corner and I see a straight up riot. Like not rioting,
Yeah.
but like the type of
massive
crowd
people.
that's like in a protest or something. Guys stretching, I'm like, dang. So I go at a park like on the side. I come, and you guys already had worked out already.
Yeah. So what
People
what
were
Leif and I
ready.
Did, what Leif and I did was we went. I said, "Hey, Leif, we might get contingency is there's 150 people. We're not going to be able to direct this thing if we're doing it.
Right.
We need to get in leadership position. So we need to go work out before the 0445 muster workout. We need to go work out before that.
Optional, by the way.
So we went and hit it before." And it was a pretty hardcore workout. It was one of those workouts where it can suck as much as you want it to suck. And, of course, we want it to suck bad.
Pushing it.
So we're dripping with sweat. We come walking over. And it's the same thing for us. We are walking back from the workout area, which was down by the San Diego Convention Center. We're walking back to the hotel. We're in a little jog. We turn the corner. Now we're really close. So we start walking. And we see the same thing. We see, like, all these people. And it was 250 or 300 people are ready to rock and roll at 4. It's only 4:28, right?
Sun's not even up. It's nighttime.
The sun's not
it's
even
nighttime.
thinking about coming up.
Yeah,
It's straight up nighttime.
Yeah.
So we got after it, and that was a good representation of the attitude that was at the muster.
Right.
And the other funny thing was when people would ask questions, they'd say, "Oh, I just got promoted in this new position, and this is going on." And then someone else would say, "I just got promoted 3 times in the last 6 months, and I want to know." And so you're thinking, okay, all these people are just fast tracked. They're in the game. They're on it. It's just, It was really an awesome event. Great job with the video. Echo Charles made some really killer videos for that, and it was awesome.
Those videos were awesome. Like very captivating. You know, me sitting there in the crowd.
Yeah.
It was just like, there was a couple times I had to get up. You know, the first day I stood in the back or sat in the back, and I had to get up and I'd pace because I was just like so connected. It just brought me back, you know, or just emotional connection. And then, you know, everyone else did the same thing. And the second day I'm sitting up in the front row, and I was like, I can't stand up and pace right now. But just everyone, you just watching other people, and it's just, dude, great job. Those videos were insane, man.
Thanks. You were in one of those.
I know. I had the doctor's mask on, so nobody recognized me.
Yeah, on the DL.
That's right.
Yeah. Somebody asked me about it. They're like, pretty blonde and the guy holding twins, babies. I'm like, yeah,
that's right. That's right. That's the rough transitions video.
Yeah.
So the rough transition video that Echo made is the person holding the baby.
The babies.
The babies.
The twins.
Yeah.
That's JP right there. So there's a little layer right there, isn't there?
Yeah,
all
a little
of a sudden. Now
inside
that's
thing.
what you're talking about.
Yeah, if you're kind of on the inside, you're gonna see them and you're gonna recognize them. That's I think the fun part. One of the many fun parts.
Awesome. And also, so if you like what we're talking about here and you want to continue, maybe you didn't get enough of this today, you want to keep talking to us, you can actually just find us cruising hard, apparently, on the interwebs, on Twitter, on Instagram, and we even on that Facebooky. Echo is at Echo Charles. And I am at Jocko Willink. And Jeremiah JP Dinnell is at, where you at?
On Twitter, JP, or at JP Dinnell. Instagram would be Never Settle Consulting. And Facebook page, Never Settle Consulting LLC. So if you like the page, able to put out any upcoming events or anything that's going on. Just try to connect with people through social media.
Awesome. Dig it. Echo, any final thoughts from you?
I don't. Really good to see you again, man.
Awesome.
I mean, we've kept in touch online and stuff,
great.
which is cool, but man, really good to see you again.
Awesome. Oh, if you go to neversettleconsulting.com, that'll be up in the near future as well. But
cool.
you can contact me through the social media, but the website will be up and running soon. But it's great seeing you again, bro. Like coming out here, I was like, I got the call from Jocko. I turned down a couple different gigs or, switched some work around. I was like, dude, I got to get out of here. And Amanda was like, don't be an idiot. You're going. We'll find a way. And it was awesome, able to work it out and be on the podcast. I just appreciate you guys having me out here, man.
Of course,
it's awesome.
Man. You got any final thoughts?
Yeah. Obviously, I just want to thank all the troops overseas, all the troops that are home, the family members of the troops that never made it back. We appreciate you guys. All the law enforcement officers out there, firefighters, medics, you guys are getting after it, serving your community every day. And, of course, I want to thank Amanda just for her continued support and love. And my kids, I love those kids. I look forward to the day where they're old enough where they can actually listen and process this. So, Aiden, Cora, Nola, I love you guys. And, it's awesome.
Well, thanks for coming on.
Appreciate it.
Obviously.
Thank you.
And thanks for everything you've ever done for me, brother.
I appreciate that.
Above and beyond anything I could have ever hoped for, the kind of performance and the kind of attitude and the bravery and the courage. Always. Thank you.
Thank you.
Always thank you. And the other day when we were at the muster, we were in that big crowd, and we'd kind of turned the corner, and we were getting to the area where we were going to start the workout thing. And I assessed real quick, and I said, I'm going to need some help getting some organization stuff going on here. And we really didn't have a plan for 300 people, right? We had a plan for 30 or 40 people.
Way different.
And so I'm sitting there and I'm going into, okay, what am I going to do? Got to prioritize and execute. I need some help. And it's just dark, 4 o'clock in the morning. So I just yell out. I go, JP. And instantly I hear some distance away, I hear, yes, sir. And I look up where that came from, and I see JP, and he made quick eye contact with me. I see him moving, down the stairs. He's coming to me. And in that split second, I remembered all the times that I had called your name and I had asked you to do what needed to be done. And you always stepped up without question, without regard for your safety or for your own security. You always stepped up just with the mission and the team and your brothers in mind. Always putting others before yourself, like so many others in our task unit did. Like Mark and Mikey and Ryan. And like the many soldiers and Marines did in the Battle of Ramadi and in the rest of Iraq and in Afghanistan and on battlefields all over the world throughout history, putting others before themselves with their heads held high. And to everyone else that is out there listening, think about that. Think about putting the mission before your own needs. Think about putting others before yourself. And think about walking through the world with all the threats and challenges in front of you. Think about walking through the daily battles that you face with your back straight and your head held high, facing the threat, facing the fear, scanning for what is next so you can engage and get after it. So, until next time, this is Echo and Jocko and my brother JP Dinnell. Out.